Thinking of this, he quickly shouted to stop them. But before the second prince could finish his sentence, many people were already hanging from ropes and flying down from the hot air balloon. At the inner city wall, Green City, a group of people were jumping down from a hot air balloon. Seeing this, the second prince hurriedly shouted, "Deacon Hong, quickly think of a way to deal with these things in the sky," but Deacon Hong was nowhere to be seen or heard. Only a subordinate hurriedly ran up to report, "Reporting to your highness, Black Iris's people are nowhere to be seen." The second prince was startled and angry, not believing what he heard. What, those people, dared to run away from battle? The pirate leader standing by was also worried, realizing something was wrong. He said to the person beside him, "Damn it, this time we've suffered a big loss." The junior was also scared, equally worried, "Big brother, what should we do?" The senior looked at the foolish juniors and was angry. What else could he do? Of course he did the same as them. "We are not noble soldiers, once captured, our only path is death." "What nobles? Don't think about it anymore, survival is the reality." The underlings understood clearly, nodded in agreement with the leader, yes. The pirate leader turned to the roof and shouted, "Mila, are you still there?" A cold, emotionless voice came from the roof, "Yes." The leader continued, "Kill the nobles across from me." The girl's cat eyes narrowed slightly. These eyes were exactly like Mina's, just a different color. The girl said, "Then this is the third condition between us." On the other side, Lu Feng's soldiers were attacking an enemy. Suddenly he felt a chill behind his back, so he turned around. Facing him were a group of armed beastmen charging towards him, all of them looking very strong. Mila ordered the beastmen behind, "Everyone, enemy target leader, take the breakthrough as the main priority, do not engage in combat." All the beastmen behind shouted in unison, "Yes, big sister." With that, all the beastmen split up and took action. Suddenly, a spear flew down from the sky. The spear flew towards Mila. Luckily she turned around, avoiding the attack. Seeing Mila like that, everyone worriedly asked, "Big sister?" Mila raised her head. In the sky was Leia, who had flown the spear just now. Mila exclaimed in doubt, "Bird race." Leia was angry, mixed with a bit of disappointment, said, "Humph, actually avoided." Before Leia could say anything more, a beastman holding an axe attacked Leia. "Big sister, go quickly." It turned out that the beastman was there to hold Leia back, giving Mila time to do the main thing. Not wanting to waste everyone's efforts, Mila quickly rushed forward and attacked Lu Feng. Suddenly, Mila's pupils widened, her face filled with surprise as she looked at the person in front of her. It was Mina. Mina looked at Mila with a surprised, and somewhat worried face and said, "Everyone." Mila and the beastmen all stopped, looking at Mina in front of them, "Mina." As if realizing that Mila's side was the enemy's, Mina shouted and threatened, "Everyone stop, or I won't be polite." Mila saw Mina threatening her and her people like that, so she didn't lose her temper and said, "No, your mission is to kill that turtle clan. I'm also a cat clan warrior, so I should know this rule." Mina's face darkened, she opened her mouth and said coldly, "Then we can only fight each other." Mila also did not expect her sister to break the rules, so she said, "I never expected that this is the first time we meet again, we will use our enemy identities." With that, Mila pulled out her knife and got into a fighting position. On the other side, seeing the Mina sisters preparing to fight, Nyoda worriedly asked Lu Feng, "Young master, young lady Mina on the other side has encountered an enemy." Lu Feng observed for a while and said, That's a beastman, leave it to Mina, tell the army to increase the siege." Nyoda replied, "Yes, returning to the battle between Mila and Mina." Both sides stared at each other, ready to get into battle positions. On the wall, a subordinate hurriedly reported the news to the second prince, "Your Highness, the city wall cannot be defended anymore. This city is ruined. We must retreat quickly." Second prince, face angry, "No way, hateful Lu Feng, retreat." The soldiers and the second prince hurriedly retreated, ran away, protected his highness, retreated. The pirate's underling saw the second prince running away, his face changed, he pointed and said to his big brother, "Ah, boss, second prince, that coward ran away." The boss was also startled and panicked, thinking to himself, "Why is this happening? Mila has not succeeded in doing so for so long." Seeing that the boss did not say anything, the junior beside him urged, "Boss, what should we do?" Seeing this situation, the pirate boss quickly said, "Nonsense, of course we're running." Everyone shouted in unison, "Yes, yes," and quickly ran away. But Mina and Mila were still fighting each other without giving in. Mina had just been hit, fell to her knees on the ground, and shouted at her sister, "Sister, stop, this is meaningless." Mina then looked towards Mila, but didn't see Mila anywhere. After a moment of surprise, she felt a cold breeze. Before she knew it, Mila was standing behind Mina, holding a knife in her hand, pressing it against Mina's neck, questioning her. "Why do you and the bird race keep trying to stop me, the human nobles? Are you worthy of your protection?" Mina turned around, slashed towards Mila, like a cat stepping on its tail, loudly explaining, "Because the young master was the only human noble, willing to protect the beastmen." Seeing her sister like this, Mila couldn't help but sigh. It seems like she has met a good noble. Hearing this, Mina slashed again. Mila jumped up, avoiding Mina's attack, bending from the front to behind Mina. Then from the air, 2 legs kicked down on Mina. Mina was hit, her face was panicked. She didn't expect her sister to really hit her, then fell to the ground unconscious. Mila looked at her sister on the ground, although she was her sister, but unfortunately, her sister's mission was to take his life. Then Mila shot like a rocket towards Lu Feng. On the battlefield, Lu Feng was still sitting on his horse, watching Mila holding 2 knives in her hands flying towards him. Mila looked at Lu Feng with cold eyes. Lu Feng just smiled gently and waved his hand. The sword in Lu Feng's hand blocked Mila's knife slashes. Then, Lu Feng jumped up from the saddle and jumped behind Mila. Mila saw Lu Feng's speed, her eyes widened, her face full of surprise, thinking in her mind, behind him, the speed is so fast, is he really a noble? Because in her impression, the nobles were useless people, without any power, always having someone to protect them and pointing fingers at them. Suddenly she screamed, Lu Feng hit her wrist, causing her weapon to fall, and at the same time twisted her wrist, making her unable to move. After she finished shouting, she heard Lu Feng above say, "It's over, tell her men to stop, this fight has no meaning anymore." On the other side, the beastmen saw that Mila had been captured by Lu Feng and were shocked. They failed. Big sister Mila was actually defeated. How could this be possible? Mila saw that she had failed, turned her head away, and said seriously, "I lost. You can kill or slash as you wish, I hope you don't take your anger out on Mina, this is our order and mission, it has nothing to do with her." Lu Feng was surprised when he heard this and asked Mila, "Who said I wanted to kill you guys?" Mila's head was full of questions, how could she forgive her enemy, especially someone who just wanted to kill her? Lu Feng turned to Mina who had just woken up and was struggling to come here and said, "Mina, leave it to you." Mina smiled and replied, "Yes." Mila was surprised to see that, but then she understood. "Why did you ask me to come? This is the hobby of nobles. Go ahead and do it." Mina saw that her sister misunderstood, so she smiled and explained, "Mila, the young master doesn't want you to kill everyone." Mila didn't believe it and objected, but weren't the nobles very cruel to assassins? Why would he? Mina could only scratch her head, not knowing how to explain. This couldn't be explained in a few sentences. In short, as long as everyone knows, the young master is a special noble, and he is also someone I like. Mila and all the beastmen were especially stunned when they heard this, everyone was gaping, not believing what Mina said. Really, no way? Lu Feng looked from afar at Mina, a smile appeared on his face, and thought to himself, it seems like Mina's family is theirs. Seeing everyone's surprise, Mina could only scratch her head, her face red with embarrassment as she looked at everyone. Outside the city, the second prince and his subordinates were panting. The second prince was holding onto a tree trunk, his face full of fatigue, mixed with anger and unwillingness. A subordinate reported, "Your Highness, there are no pursuers, we escaped." The second prince was tired and sat down under a tree, sighing. He was dying, that bunch of black iris trash dared to abandon this prince and run away. After that, the second prince looked at his subordinates who were sitting and resting, feeling even more uncomfortable, and shouted, "Hey, who let you sit down? Quickly straighten up for me." Hearing this, the subordinates had no choice but to respond with a yes. The second prince didn't know if he was having a fit or not, but he kept yelling and cursing. The whole group couldn't do anything, the pirates were the same, and they were defeated by Lu Feng underwater, trash. On one side, the second prince was getting angry, while on the other side, his subordinates were discussing heatedly. One person said, he didn't know how many people would return. Another person was full of doubts about the future, "Hey, what should we do next, that guy already lost, continuing to follow him won't get us anything." The other person was doubtful, "What do you mean, what do you mean?" The soldiers whispered to each other to discuss a plan. "That's right, I don't want to be in the wilderness in the future, not being able to return home." Suddenly, the second prince turned his head to look around and shouted, "Someone, get me some water." "Where are you? Where did you run off to?" Suddenly the second prince's voice stopped, he felt many dangerous gazes looking at him all around. He suddenly felt cold all over and looked around. His eyes suddenly lost their vision and he couldn't see anything, then he was caught and taken away. After a while of moving, he angrily took off the blindfold, angrily shouted, "Damn you, let me go, I have to kill you." He opened his eyes and saw Lu Feng sitting on the chair above him. Lu Feng saw that the second prince had woken up and greeted him, "Green, we meet again." Second Prince Green shouted angrily, "Lu Feng." The two subordinates saw that the second prince was still speaking in such an arrogant tone, so they shouted, "Shut your mouth." The second prince was very angry but could do nothing, he could only express it through words. "You two disloyal bastards, how dare you do this to me?" The two soldiers of the second prince knelt down and respectfully said to Lu Feng, "Your Excellency Lu Feng, we are citizens of the city and had no choice but to fight for this man. Please have mercy and let us return home. Lu Feng understood and nodded in agreement. Is that so? Okay, I can agree with you too. Where are the people? Take them home. The other two people had tears in their eyes, their faces filled with happiness, and replied in unison, Thank you, Lu Feng. Lu Feng gave the order, arranging for someone to escort Green to the royal capital, awaiting judgment. The second prince shouted, Wait, Lu Feng, we can discuss conditions. Lu Feng ignored that guy and breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over. Nyoda stood beside him and asked, Young master, what should we do next? The second prince still shouted, Lu Feng, we can discuss more conditions. Lu Feng rested his chin on his hand, his face happy, smiling, Do I still need to ask? Of course it's about Xiang city. Nyoda happily replied, Yes. In the beast kingdom of Brutus, the forbidden mountain range, in a cave. Two people were talking to each other. A beastman said to the tiger beastman, Lord Yami, this is the last portion of food for this year. Yami was silent, holding the map tightly and replied, I know. Yami looked at the fire with a sad face and worriedly thought. In his mind, this little bit of food was completely insufficient and would not last through the winter. The tiger beastman Bren asked again, Sir, do we still have to defend? Yami replied, Of course, protecting the museum is the king's order for us. Bren's eyes were sad, looking at the girl with sympathy, worriedly said, But if this continues, everyone will lose their lives. In his heart he thought, this snow doesn't know when it will stop. Us. Yami heard that and just nodded, I know. Bren didn't say anything more and replied, Yes. Yami was also confused, not knowing what to do. He also really wanted to know, should he leave or continue to guard, waiting for the royal family to arrive. At the Yukam mountain range, where the mountains are numerous, the snow is falling heavily, and the cold wind blows continuously. The cold is piercing, and the entire scene is now covered in white snow, exuding an invisible sadness. Avery and Joan's group walked forward with heavy steps. Joan's cheeks were red. Her whole body couldn't help but shiver from the cold, even though she was wearing a thick coat, it didn't make her feel warmer, she sighed. Hoo, it's so cold. Avery walked ahead and saw her like that and wondered, What's wrong? I don't feel bad. Jones felt indignant when he heard Avery say that, It chills me to death, don't compare me to someone with wolf blood like you. Suddenly, Avery raised her hand to her lips in a silencing gesture, while her left hand covered Jones' mouth, making a soft shushing sound. Jones was surprised by her raised hand, and because it was so cold, he couldn't help but let out a cry, hoo. Avery bent down to look at the footprints under the thick snow. She was somewhat confused, the snow was so cold, how could there be signs of activity? As for Jones, he still couldn't figure out what was going on, his mouth was full of complaints, his hands were so cold. There seemed to be a noise coming from somewhere, both of them looked in one direction. It was a large rock. Behind it, a figure appeared. Avery reached out his hand to draw his sword, not forgetting to shout loudly. Who? The person behind the rock trembled and appeared, raising both hands in a surrendering gesture. Both Avery and Jones looked at the person in surprise. Oh, a beast man. The beast girl led Avery and Jones' group to her and everyone else's place. Avery looked at the tribe in front of her and couldn't help but be surprised. She didn't expect that there would be a tribe of beastmen living on this snowy mountain. She then turned back and instructed the people behind her to wait outside. The others immediately replied, yes. Avery and Jones went deeper inside with the little girl. Jones looked around and couldn't help but wonder if this place could really accommodate people. Hearing this, Avery also began to look around. Their clothes were thin, there was very little food, and there was not enough fuel. Could it be that they wanted to rely on these things to survive the winter in a place like the Forbidden Mountain Range? At this moment, a figure appeared and spoke, "Long time no see, Lord Avery." Avery raised his head when he heard the person calling his name. Recognizing someone she knew, she shouted, "Mr. Bren." Not letting her rejoice for long, Bren continued, "Follow me, Lord Yami has been waiting for a long time." Avery heard that and immediately replied, "Oh, okay," but Jones behind her didn't seem to understand what was going on, so she chose to stay silent. Avery followed Bren, and as she walked, she couldn't help but think. Yami, the leader of the royal guards, was here too, but why did she feel like they all knew she would be here? Bren led Avery and Jones to a cave. Jones saw the fire and immediately ran over to sit down and warm himself. Avery was now standing opposite Yami and Bren. Yami spoke up, "Long wait Avery, finally everyone is here, we've been waiting for you for a long time." Hearing this, Avery asked curiously, "Lord Yami, do you know we came to investigate the Forbidden Mountain Range?" At the same time Avery asked, Yami also said, "Are you here to take the museum for Princess Ellie?" Each of them had different thoughts, so when they heard the other say that, neither of them doubtfully mentioned the word museum, but Yami asked and investigated. Yami raised her hand to signal Avery to stop. Avery stood talking, then she turned to ask Bren, "Bren, what's going on?" Being called by name, Bren couldn't help but awkwardly reply, "I don't know either." At this moment, Joan sitting by the fire began to speak, as if there was some misunderstanding. Avery heard her say that, pondered for a bit, then turned back to ask Yami, "Lord Yami, the museum you mentioned, could it be the museum the king left behind to restore the country?" When asked, Yami answered frankly, "Yes, I was ordered by the king to lead the royal army to guard here, always waiting for the royal family to come and start the museum, restore the country, but no one came." Avery's eyes became strangely serious after hearing Yami say that. She replied, "Indeed, Your Highness Yami, please follow me and leave this place, everyone doesn't need to guard here anymore." Yami saw Avery say that and immediately showed an unhappy expression. She frowned and questioned. What she meant was that our persistent guarding was meaningless. Avery ignored Yami's attitude. She calmly said, "We did before, but now it's not necessary anymore." Avery faced Yami. Behind her was Yami's group standing and listening to the situation. She slowly told the truth. The two princesses already had their own territory. Lady Bella had also found her own land. They also knew the address of the museum. Hearing that, Yami asked, "So why didn't they come to get it?" At this point, Avery's eyes became unusually sharp. She explained, "Because there was no need to take the museum anymore." This was the unanimous conclusion of the two princes. "To tell the truth, if I hadn't received the order to investigate, I wouldn't have come here, and I wouldn't have known that you two were still guarding here. Now that I know, I can't let everyone continue to wait here to die." Avery's tone suddenly changed, a bit provocative, or rather, in Lord Yami's heart, going down the mountain to help the princess was no better than waiting to die in the snowy mountains. Hearing this, Yami couldn't help but feel extremely angry. "Do you understand? This is a promise between us and His Majesty the King." Seeing the situation getting serious, Bren spoke up to advise Yami. He expressed his opinion. "Lord Yami, Lord Avery is right. If Her Highness the Princess has no intention of taking the treasure, there is no point in us suffering here. Furthermore, our food is not enough for everyone to get through the winter, only me and a few brothers will stay. Let everyone go out. Lord Yami can bring the others along with Lord Avery to meet Her Highness the Princess. Then we can decide how to handle it." Hearing this, Yami hesitated a bit. Just as he was about to say something, Bren continued. "Lord Yami, there aren't many of our royal guards left. They should be warriors who fight in the battlefield." Finally, after a series of words from Bren, Yami compromised. "Okay, let's do it, Avery. Please take me to see the princess." Avery immediately replied, "No problem." Back in the western city, the sky was so clear. White clouds dotted the sky with gentle sunlight, making people feel so peaceful. Lu Feng stepped down from the cabin and stretched, feeling the familiar atmosphere. "Ah, finally back." Niu Wu and Niu San were already standing below, ready to report. "Young master, the defense change is complete, we can set off at any time." Hearing this, Lu Feng said. You've worked hard." Then he gave Niu San a plan and gave instructions. "Niu San, this time you lead the new recruits to attack and capture important cities, especially the cities I marked. At the same time, cooperate with Robin and Queen Timothy to capture the cult leaders." Niu San seemed very happy. He took what Lu Feng gave him and replied, "Yes, I guarantee to complete the mission." Then he rubbed his head and said, Young master, my subordinates have been impatient, they are all waiting to go out and kill the enemy." Lu Feng heard Niu San say that and did not hesitate to praise him. "The morale is not bad, it is a good thing, let's go." The sound of the steamboat's engine came again, and the three large ships continued to leave the dock. Lu Feng watched the departing ships for a while and then muttered to himself. "Alright, next, it's time to go back." Xiang City, at the mansion of the owner, Lu Feng has just returned. Dees, Nicole and Flay came out to welcome the young master back. Lu Feng went into the study to chat with everyone. Meanwhile, Ellie stood lurking at the door, not daring to go in. Ellie's mind was in a fierce battle right now. What to do? Why did I agree with what you said before you left? Now I don't dare look at the young master. Lu Feng was talking in the room when he suddenly asked. "Oh, where is Ellie?" Nicole was also surprised. She said, "Oh, I thought Ellie was waiting for the young master in the office. Should I call her?" Ellie outside the door was startled when her name was mentioned. Not good. She just raised her voice from the door. "Welcome back, I still have things to do. Talk to you next time." After saying that, she immediately ran away, making Mina curious when she saw it. "Oh, Ellie, what's wrong with Ellie?" Lu Feng also saw it but he didn't seem to care, answering Mina. Maybe he gave too many tasks before leaving. Lu Feng then walked towards the desk. He picked up the pile of documents on the desk and looked through them before adding more. But they had basically all started. He thought that just starting one or two plans would be good enough. Nicole brought the tray of teacups closer and told the story. Ellie had a hard time during this time. She was busy every day. Lu Feng replied softly without taking his eyes off the pile of papers. I'm glad she was willing to stay in Xiang City at first. Suddenly realizing what he had just said, he turned around and saw the angry, sullen faces of both Nicole and Mina, so he felt guilty and explained. Of course, you guys are also very important to me. Night gradually fell. The moonlight seemed to dance on the walls of the Lord's mansion. In the long hallway, Ellie tiptoed and looked around. Suddenly, a voice called Ellie, making her startled and turn around. It was Deesa's voice. Ellie asked, feeling guilty. What's wrong? Dees didn't feel Ellie's unusual attitude. She pointed to the city lord's room and said. Oh, nothing, the young master told her to go there after she returned. Ellie said a few words in response to Dees, saying that she knew. Ellie's face turned red, she pursed her lips and spoke softly, unable to avoid it. Knock knock, the sound of knocking on the door rang out. Lu Feng immediately shouted, come in. The door was opened slightly by the person outside. Ellie timidly said young master and walked in. She looked in the direction where Lu Feng was sitting. Conflicting thoughts began to form in her mind. What should she do? Should she stand there and wait for the young master or take the initiative? What about after going there? How? Take off your clothes first? No, if I had known, I would have asked Mina. No, how could I ask someone about this? Ellie stood there, scratching her head. Somehow, at some point, Lu Feng had come to her. His voice pulled her back to reality. What's wrong? Are you uncomfortable? Ellie was startled by the question, her face still red as she exclaimed. Oh, nothing. Seeing her answer like that, Lu Feng didn't think much more. He patted her head and said, Ellie, you've worked hard this time. Ellie lowered her head slightly, enjoying the pat on the head and shyly replied. It's the right thing to do, because I'm the secretary. Lu Feng lowered his head and looked at her for a moment. Then he turned and walked towards his desk. As he walked, he said, all right, come over here quickly. We have captured the capital. There are still many things to deal with. Ellie asked him a little disappointedly, did the young master call me here for this? Seeing her wondering like that, Lu Feng asked back with some confusion. What if not? Ellie felt that she was a bit rude for thinking so much. She waved her hand guiltily, no, it's nothing. After that, perhaps Lu Feng wouldn't question him anymore, so he put his hand on his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. I was scared to death, it wasn't that. But surely the young master has not forgotten what he said. Lu Feng was now sitting on the chair at the desk. He handed the map to Ellie and said, look at this map first. These are the 5 cities that I told Nyo-san to capture. Ellie didn't listen and didn't think about what happened before. She walked over to the desk and replied, let me take a look. After looking at the marked locations on the map for a while, Ellie boldly expressed her opinion. The locations of these cities were very important. Furthermore, they could also control the important waterways nearby. Any 2 cities could blockade an area within them. After Ellie finished analyzing, she raised her head and asked Lu Feng. Young master, you want to use these 5 cities to control the whole country? Lu Feng directly admitted without hiding anything. Then he added, yes. This is the main military base that we will have to build in the future, the railway and the airport. I need you to help me prepare the manpower and related materials. Quickly prepare everything before the spring crop. Ellie immediately agreed. She raised her hand to rub her cheek and replied. Let me think. She stared at the map again. Calculating silently in her head. This was a large-scale project. Not to mention the materials. In terms of manpower, I'm afraid there wouldn't be that much labor. Using workers from other cities. No way. They wouldn't know the young master's architectural rules. It would only make more chaos. Then how about training them later? No way. There's not enough time. Finally, Ellie finally made a suggestion. Young master, I would like to propose building 3 more factories. Lu Feng heard her suggestion and asked. Why? Ellie immediately presented her point of view. Because for now, except for the factory that the young master built before, the other places are using the same method as before. So I want to borrow that factory to plan an area. Mainly in charge of manufacturing. That way, a large portion of the labor force can be freed up. To satisfy the construction requirements of those cities. Oh, industrial park? Lu Feng found Ellie's words very agreeable. He stood up and agreed. Okay, he allowed it. Ellie felt accepted. Her tail immediately wagged happily, and she replied. Then I will immediately give the order. But before Ellie could run away, Lu Feng grabbed her hand and stopped her. Wait. Lu Feng gently pulled Ellie into his arms. He reminded her. It's so late. Everyone should be resting. Ellie couldn't help but blush when she was suddenly hugged. She was confused and didn't know what Lu Feng meant. Seeing her like that, Lu Feng gently reminded her. I remember before leaving, someone promised to wait for me to come back. Will stay with me. In the end, why is he avoiding me? At this moment, Ellie's face became redder and redder. Her eyes were a bit evasive, not daring to look straight at Lu Feng as she stammered in response. If you say so, then I'll stay. Having said that, Ellie shyly hugged Lu Feng. Her eyes were closed but her mouth said, you asked for this, I didn't initiate it. Seeing her so adorable, Lu Feng couldn't help but indulge her a little and replied, yes, yes. After that, I don't know what happened in the room, I only know that from the window I can only hear Ellie's screams. Ah, young master, leave it to me. Elsewhere in the western city, the night sky was filled with thousands of sparkling stars, and the view of the western city was majestic yet poetic. Mina and her sister Mila sat on the roof of a building and looked into the distance. Mila couldn't help but admire the scene before her. This was truly a city worthy of praise, and it also had a good lord. Mina sitting next to her heard her sister say that and also smiled lightly and replied, I told you Mila would like Tae Duong Tan. Mila turned to her sister and said, your luck is not bad, you met humans who treat you very well. Hearing that, Mina felt a little embarrassed, she said, at first she almost killed him. Then she turned to ask, so Mila, do you want to leave here? Mila replied, temporarily not. Hearing that, Mina was curious, temporarily, is there anything here that makes you unhappy? Mila shook her head, no. I just find it a little hard to believe, as you said. A commoner bought a title and a castle, and then became a king. This kind of story is indeed more confusing than the legends in the mouths of those poets, and he is also very knowledgeable about delicacies. Mina smiled and explained, there is a little, but you can't use common sense to understand the young master. Mila picked up the pizza in her hand and ate it. While chewing, she thought, even if she didn't kill her sister on the battlefield, she must repay this favor. She must also repay the favor of taking care of me. So I will stay here and see first, until I see him clearly and then I will decide. If he looks the same inside and out, I will choose to stay. After all, I don't want to be disappointed again. The next morning, in the dining room of the city lord's mansion, almost everyone gathered to prepare breakfast. Ellie ran back and sat on the chair in a happy mood. Nicole looked at her and smiled, not a bad mood, Ellie. Mina, who was sitting next to her, also came closer to tease her. It seems like last night was fun. Ellie blushed, and said in a serious tone, no, that's not true. Nicole, who was next to her, put down her plate of food and smiled happily, congratulating Ellie. Seeing that she was still stubborn, Mina immediately exposed her, it was all on her face, stop pretending. Ellie felt guilty, raised her hand to touch her face and asked again, really? Mina couldn't hold back her laughter anymore, she tried to cover her mouth with her hand, only then did Ellie realize she was being teased. She was embarrassed and kept hitting Mina, her face red as she stammered an explanation, it was all because the young master forced her to agree, I didn't want to. Mina pretended to understand, raised her hand to block Ellie's hits, but her mouth was still smiling, yes, yes. Yuffie sat eating on the opposite side, she heard Mina's conversation with Ellie and couldn't help but feel a little jealous, biting her spoon and saying, that's great. At the table, everyone continued to laugh and talk happily. Mila suddenly sighed. Nicole saw it and asked with a slightly worried face, what's wrong, Mila? Why doesn't it sound right? Mila's face was expressionless, she said, no, it's delicious, it's the best food I've ever eaten. Nicole happily replied, oh dear, thanks for the compliment. Then Mila suddenly continued speaking, I was just sighing, human men are really greedy, they don't refuse anyone who comes, you girls are clearly different, but in the end it seems like he likes them all. Hearing this, Ellie seemed to think a little and said, it seems so. The young master is a flower-hearted radish, and I like flower-hearted radishes. Hearing this, Nicole also tried to analyze the situation. She was a human, the tallest. Mina was a cat, of average height. Ellie was a fox, the smallest. So how should we divide them? Should I divide the young master into two? Mina didn't seem to care much about this matter, she expressed, this was also something that couldn't be helped, anyway the young master was very excellent, he was promiscuous but I still liked him very much, he was the type that wouldn't change until death. Having said her thoughts like that and then hearing her sister's answer like that, Mila could only be helpless, she was beyond help. Mina said nothing, just chuckled a few times. But Ellie next to me suddenly lowered her ears, folded her arms and lay down on the table, saying, but I never thought I would share the person I like with someone else. Nicole agreed, and so did I. Mina saw that, she blushed and replied, "That's because we haven't met the young master. I also thought about this before, but later discovered that we can't leave each other like a big family. Slowly I didn't care about those things anymore." Yuffie, who was listening attentively on the other side, also blushed unconsciously. Then Mina suddenly smiled brightly and said to everyone, "Anyway, the young master truly likes us. We don't need to calculate so much, right?" Ellie next to her pursed her lips and complained unhappily. She had said all the reasons. Couldn't Mina leave a few sentences for me to say? A loud burp sounded. The opposite side of Ellie was filled with a pile of empty plates. Dees, while everyone was chatting, had been focusing on eating. Now she patted her full belly and said, "I'm full." The touching atmosphere at this moment was completely blown away by Dees's action. Seeing everyone staring at her, Dees was a bit confused. Why is everyone looking at me? What were you guys talking about just now? Seeing that, Nicole spoke up to make up for everyone's embarrassment. "It's nothing, Dees. Do you want more food? There's a lot left." Dees said no a second ago. A second later when she heard Nicole say that, her mouth quickly agreed, okay. At another corner of the table, Yuffie was still blushing and thinking to herself, that means, I, too, might have a chance. On the opposite side, the cat girl Mila sighed gloomily, saying that love will reduce intelligence. This is not a lie. In the evening, in the hallway of the Western Castle, Mina and her sisters were wearing white shirts, walking and chatting with each other. The older sister Mila said, "Bathing in the water is indeed very comfortable." Hearing this, Mina replied, "Hee, I told you that you would like it if you tried it out." Suddenly, Mina cried out. She quickly turned back to the bathroom. She told her sister before, "I forgot to get my things. Mila, sister, wait for me a bit." Mila immediately agreed. While waiting for Mina, she turned around to look at the sparkling city of the Atlantic through the glass window. Looking at the scenery, she couldn't help but say, "Lu Feng, he is truly a wonderful person." Mila stood silently watching. Lu Feng, after a hard day's work in the study, went out and couldn't help but complain. So tired. There is too much to handle, we have to think of a way to recruit a few more people. Suddenly, he looked forward and saw Mila's figure behind him because the two sisters looked alike, not knowing that he had mistaken the person. Lu Feng didn't know what to think. A sly smile suddenly appeared on his face. Lu Feng slowly approached, grabbed the tail of the person in front, and caught him. Seeing the person in front suddenly tremble, Lu Feng was a little puzzled. Why is there no reaction? Before the reaction was very intense. At this moment, Mila turned around with a dark face and said in a threatening tone, "Are you happy, Lu Feng?" Lu Feng looked closely at the person in front of him and was startled and panicked. "Mila." Before he could explain, Mina's voice echoed from afar. "Mila, I'm back, let's go." Lu Feng's hand had not yet left Mila's tail. Hearing Mila's voice, Lu Feng panicked and felt guilty. "Mina, what should we do? What should we do?" Just as Mina was about to appear, Mila pulled the red door curtain to cover Lu Feng. Mina appeared at this moment and looked at Mila and asked, "Why didn't you answer me when you were here?" "I thought you had gone home first." Mila thought of some excuse and answered casually, thinking a bit too deeply, "That's right, Lu Feng was looking for me just now." Hearing that, Mina was a bit surprised but she quickly replied, "Young master, then I'll go to his office, you go back first." Mila also responded with an aha sound. Lu Feng heard Mina's footsteps running away and let out a soft sigh of relief. He lifted the curtain and stuck his face out, saying, "Thank you, Mila." Mila turned back to glance at him and replied sarcastically, "Just got out of the tiger's den and into the wolf's den. So you had something in mind that made you go easy on me, right? Your Excellency Lu Feng." Being questioned by Mila, Lu Feng felt guilty and quickly explained that he misunderstood because her back and Mina's were too similar. Mila saw his attitude, her eyes still staring at him, her expression unchanged as she calmly replied, "I know, just kidding." Lu Feng was sweating, a little unable to understand this Mila girl. Seeing that this matter was over, Mila turned around and prepared to return to her room. Before leaving, she turned back and said, "Then I'll take my leave first, Lu Feng. Don't worry, I won't tell Mina about what just happened." Lu Feng suddenly remembered something. He ran over and grabbed Mila's wrist to stop her. "Wait, I still have something to tell you." Jerking her hand out of Lu Feng's, Mila started teasing again, "You still want to continue what you just did, you greedy human noble." Lu Feng heard that and hurriedly explained, "Oh, I want to discuss future arrangements for you guys." In the room, Lu Feng sat across from Mila. On the table was a bottle of wine and a glass already filled. Lu Feng spoke up about the matter he wanted to discuss earlier. "In short, Mila, you should live in the castle first and work with Mina. I also heard Mina say that your skills are better than hers. My friend also plans to arrange for them to join the special forces in military camp for training, rest assured. Their remuneration is the same as others. Of course, if everyone wants to leave, I absolutely won't stop them. Do you have anything else to add?" Mila had been sipping her drink for a while now. Her face was already red from the alcohol. She replied after listening to him, "The conditions are very good. I thank you on their behalf. After saying everything, Lu Feng stood up and said to Mila. Okay. Time is getting late, Miss Mila, please rest early. Mila was not in a hurry to leave. She was still shaking the wine glass in her hand. She spoke up to stop Lu Feng from leaving. Wait, Your Excellency Lu Feng. For Mina's sake, I have some information that I decided to tell you. Mila slowly recounted in a slightly drunken voice. At first, when I was at the pirate's place, I had eavesdropped on the conversation between Jalunia and Black Iris. At that time, Deacon Hong told the man with the ponytail that Her Highness the Princess would probably be visiting soon. You should prepare. The man replied after hearing that. Speak, Lord Deacon. We have been at sea for so many years. It is time for us to return. I almost forgot that I am a member of the FAO Empire. Deacon Hong replied. Rest assured. As long as this side catches your net, you will naturally return home in peace. The Empire will not forget the price you paid. The man felt a little relieved when he heard this. After hearing this, Lu Feng couldn't help but frown and repeat, the FAO Empire. Mila at this time, the glass of wine in her hand had already been empty, she continued. After that, I investigated further. I found out that it was an empire in another place by the sea. They came to that continent a long time ago. But they never announced this name. Instead, they disguised themselves as Black Iris pirates. They have been secretly investigating this land. Lu Feng put his hand on his chin and speculated. The empire is next to another part of the sea. That is, there is a continent outside that vast sea. Mila did not understand his speculations. She replied. Politically, I do not understand. But militarily, Your Excellency Lu Feng, I do not need to say more. You also know what they are planning. Lu Feng frowned, showing that he understood. I get it. This is preparing for an invasion. He suddenly turned around, clenched his fists in determination, absolutely cannot let them return like this. Where are the people? Mila kindly reminded, afraid it was too late. When he first fought them, they were already preparing to retreat. She put the empty glass of wine down on the table. She continued, now I'm telling you, I hope you're ready for battle. It would probably take them about 2 months by boat to get back to FAO. So he had about 4 months left. Lu Feng heard this and turned to look at her gratefully. Thank you. Mila, this news is very important to me. Mila felt nothing. She sighed. I didn't want to tell you either. But who said I owed you? Then she suddenly turned to stare at Lu Feng. Speaking cautiously. So that you don't use favors to force me to do something. I can only give you the benefits first. Lu Feng was a little confused and stunned when he heard that. He said. Why should I force you? Who knows? I knew you were a greedy man who wouldn't refuse. Hearing that her tone was a bit off, Lu Feng was suddenly startled. Miss Mila. You're drunk. Mila replied in a daze. No. Then she put her hands on the chair to stand up. Your wine. How could I? Before she could finish her sentence, Mila was already staggering and about to fall. Seeing this, Lu Feng immediately ran over to support her. Be careful. After catching up with her, Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly the atmosphere became a bit cold. A familiar gaze and voice swept over. Young master. Lu Feng jumped up and exclaimed. Mina. Mina walked over with anger in her body to question. He said he was waiting for me in the office. But he ran here with Mila. Lu Feng was flustered. He couldn't move aside like that and Mila would fall. He was also afraid that Mina would misunderstand. Listen to me explain. Mina took her drunken sister back from Lu Feng. She put her sister behind her. She didn't even look at Lu Feng. Okay. Think about how to explain first. I'll deal with you later. Let's go. Let's go back to the room. Mila. Mina carried her sister and left. Leaving Lu Feng trying to catch up with her with tears streaming down his face. The door slammed shut. The room fell silent. Lu Feng let out a soft sigh. Sit down on the chair. Eyes thoughtfully recalling the conversation just now. 4 months ago. High DM City. The full moon shone brightly in the night sky. The strong wind blew, causing the sea to ripple. On the shore, the princess was standing, watching the night scene. Her back looked a bit lonely. From behind, Deacon Hong stepped forward and announced. Your Highness, everyone is here. Princess Phil turned back and replied. Then turned back to the front. Looking at the moonlight in front of her, she asked, Little Red. She felt that after returning, what would happen if they saw me? Deacon Hong immediately replied. Definitely very surprised. The great emperor would definitely be very happy. Princess Phil didn't know what to say in her mood. Really? Happy? She sighed. A sad smile appeared on her face, behind her veil. What a pity. Black Knife is dead. I hope Duke Crofador will not blame me when I return. Having said that, she moved towards the large ship and said, let's go. I heard that the other two empires are also eyeing this continent. We must act quickly before them. Deacon Hong, who was following behind the princess, replied softly. Yes. Time passed slowly. The night gave way to the warm rays of dawn. At the shore of Hai Diem City, Sink's army had just arrived. Sink looked off into the distance. We're late. On the western side, even though Lu Feng had sent someone to rush to Haiyan City to stop He Yanwei. But for He Yanwei, who had already prepared to leave, it was already too late. In the study, Lu Feng was reading the incoming intelligence. Can't catch up. Leave. Originally just a test. Knowing that cannot kill the intruder in the beginning. Decided to calculate the next step. Under Lu Feng's orders, Niu Dai once again recruited soldiers. This time the number was 5,000 people. In addition to the previous recruitments, the number of soldiers in Lu Feng's hands directly reached the peak that the Western region could accept. And the vacant recruitment positions had attracted a large number of Western region personnel to join the Western region. Ellie's side also prepared materials and quickly built several more factories within the industrial park. Under the direction of Lu Feng and the engineering department, they created industrial projects that had never been heard of before. The shipyard of Taeduong City has also reached the scale of 5, under Lu Feng's request, every 5 days a large ship must go to sea. At the same time, in order to confront the unknown enemy on the other side of the sea, Lu Feng decided to develop new weapons. After thinking for a while, Lu Feng took the plan and went to the engineering department. At the Western City workshop, Yuffie was looking at the blueprints when she heard a call. She turned around and saw that it was Lord Lu Feng. He didn't say anything immediately, but looked at the thing being produced in front of him, and couldn't help but be surprised. Hey, it's already finished at this stage? Yuffie saw this and shouted in panic. Lord Lu Feng, don't look. Lu Feng saw that her reaction was a bit too much, so he turned around and asked, why don't you show it to me? Yuffie was startled and embarrassed when Lu Feng looked her straight in the eye, her face blushing. Me. At this moment, Yuffie's father came to his daughter's rescue. Ha ha ha, Lord Lu Feng, Yuffie originally wanted to surprise you. Who would have thought you would come by yourself? Isn't there no more surprise? Yuffie felt like her father had told her all her secrets. She angrily yelled at her father to stop. Her father also felt guilty and smiled wryly. Sorry. Lu Feng understood and thought to himself, so that's how it is. He reached out and took the notebook from Yuffie's hand, making her a little confused. While looking at the notes, he asked. So what's the problem? Let's solve it together. Yuffie happily replied. I'm very honored. She explained to Lu Feng the things she didn't understand one by one. This is the air valve, then the basket will be installed here. Then the steam engine will be here. The moving screws control the tail section. Now the main problem is. Lu Feng heard and immediately answered her. This is very easy to solve. So it's possible like this. Lord Lu Feng is really amazing. Yuffie's father, Mr. E. Lee, was very happy to see the two of them doing this together. After a while of working, asking, and explaining what Yuffie asked, until late at night, all the work was completed. Everyone's face showed joy and excitement. Mr. E. Lee looked at this giant spaceship and couldn't help but wonder. Lord Lu Feng, can this thing really fly? Lu Feng replied, of course, this is something Yuffie personally made. Yuffie happily agreed, Dad, you have to believe me in Lord Lu Feng. Lu Feng looked up at the result before his eyes. He suggested, this matter cannot be delayed, let's start the test flight, I'm really looking forward to the way it flies. Yuffie quickly agreed. In the control cabin of the spacecraft, the operator pulled the lever, shouted an announcement, opened the air valve, controlled the altitude to 100 m, and started the air valve. The wheels of the spaceship slowly retracted, slowly flying into the sky before the eyes of many people below. Yuffie saw her efforts ahead and jumped up cheering, wow, flying. Lu Feng used his hand to stroke her soft pink hair and praised her. Yuffie had worked hard for her these past few days. Yuffie happily blushed and expressed, it wasn't hard at all. It was my honor that Lord Lu Feng would let me do it. Therefore, I hope to stay by Lord Lu Feng's side forever and help him build more ships. She looked up at the thing flying in the sky, her voice filled with anticipation. I want to see, in the hands of Lord Lu Feng, what the future will ultimately become. At the aircraft factory, after the initial success, the plane was able to fly in the sky. Bringing the plane back to the factory, Yuffie rushed to repair it, carefully adjusting every detail that had problems during operation, adjusting the plane to operate optimally. Looking at the little girl working without stopping, Yuffie's father, Uncle Li, smiled and scratched his head as he said to Lu Feng, "This little girl doesn't know how to stop for a moment." Lu Feng had been attentively looking at the drawing in his hand all this time. Hearing the dwarf say that, he raised his head to look at the girl who was working hard, but Lu Feng's eyes were filled with thoughts. Lu Feng looked at it for a moment, then focused on the drawing in front of him again, his heart filled with many thoughts. After thinking for a while, Lu Feng turned to the dwarf beside him who was intently looking at his daughter and said, "Uncle Li, there's something I want to bother you with, let's go somewhere else to talk privately." Uncle Li replied, "Okay," then left the workshop with Lu Feng. Yuffie had been working intently all this time, her face flushed with tiredness. She excitedly turned around and called out, "Lord Lu Feng." But Lord Lu Feng was no longer there and was somewhere with her father. Lu Feng and Uncle Li went to the office at the aircraft factory. Uncle Li just closed the door, then turned back and asked, "Lord Lu Feng, what exactly is so mysterious?" Lu Feng replied, "I have a blueprint here, I want you to manufacture the things in it." Lu Feng brought a large drawing, spread it out on the table. Uncle Li excitedly came forward, "Let me see." As he looked at the complicated things on the drawing, his eyes became wrinkled because of the strange things, asking, this. "Lord Lu Feng, this thing's function seems to be no different from a crossbow." "Lord Lu Feng, aren't crossbows enough nowadays? Why do you have to make something so complicated? It's so troublesome." Lu Feng sighed and thought, indeed, limited by the times, even if one sees more advanced things, one still cannot understand them. One can see the importance of foresight. Holding up the blueprint, Lu Feng said, "This thing is not something that crossbows can compare to. On the blueprint are the details of the gun." Lu Feng continued, "This thing, I call it a rifle. Its effect is similar to a crossbow, but its versatility, shooting distance, and power when used are incomparable. In my prediction, the weapons in this blueprint were all smoothly manufactured, and their killing range could reach several hundred meters." Hearing the wonderful things Lu Feng had just said, Uncle Li's eyes widened in surprise as he asked again, 400, really? His voice became excited. If that was really the case, it was indeed much stronger than a crossbow. Lu Feng continued, "Moreover, with this thing, even if a person looks weak, he can kill a strong man in the blink of an eye. I have a data sheet, come and take a look." Looking at the documents on the table, Uncle Li said, "Sir Lu Feng, am I seeing the numbers wrong?" Lu Feng smiled and replied, "No. These are all early guns, the future will continue to change based on demand. In a few years, this will completely end the cold weapon era. Whether our Western race can lead other countries in the military in the future depends on these things." Lu Feng's mind at this moment had already imagined countless types of weapons, deadly weapons such as AK guns, rifles, and explosives. Uncle Li's voice became confident and decisive, saying, "If it's that important, rest assured Lord Lu Feng, I will definitely do it." Lu Feng patted his uncle on the shoulder and said, "I have prepared all the materials, more materials will be transported very soon. When that time comes I will ask the army to come over here to help with security work. I want to complete the design process, so that it can be directly put into the industrial production line for mass production. Uncle Li, after finishing these things, I still need your help to separate the technology. Each person does one step at a time, and must try not to come into contact with each other. Furthermore, the final assembly stage can only be done by people we trust." Hearing Lu Feng present the plan and assign the task, Uncle Li responded, "Sir Lu Feng, these matters are all fine, but I have a question." Lu Feng seemed to have grasped Uncle Li's thoughts. He wanted to ask why he didn't give this to Yuffie. Lu Feng caught his thoughts. Uncle Li laughed out loud. To tell the truth, his skills now are much better than mine." Lu Feng looked at the aircraft workshop and said, "I originally wanted to let her finish the spaceship before taking on this job. But you also saw Yuffie's expression when she created the spaceship. She really likes things that bring convenience to people, that can help make this world a better place. But now we have to make weapons. These are real weapons that can cause thousands and thousands of casualties. I don't want her to do something that kills people, and I don't want her to feel guilty in the future. Guns are violent, they take lives, they are crimes. I can't let an innocent little girl do something like this." Lu Feng's eyes were sad. He looked at Uncle Li and continued, "Of course, if you don't want to make this thing, it's fine, just say it directly." But Uncle Li understood Lu Feng's thoughts and feelings. He didn't seem to want to refuse. "Understood, I understand. Don't worry, leave it to me, Lord Lu Feng. I will definitely make this thing for you." Lu Feng was happy and satisfied, trustingly handing over the drawings to Uncle Li said, "Then trouble Uncle Li." Lu Feng left. Uncle Li looked at the small figure hiding behind the door, called, "Still hiding, come out." At this moment, Yuffie peeked out, looked at her father with a sullen face, and asked, "How did you know I was here?" Uncle Eli reproachfully said, "Your father raised you from a young age, you don't need to look to know." "So, did you hear everything?" Yuffie replied, handing her father a cup of hot tea. There was clearly no need to be so reserved. Uncle Eli immediately explained, "This is Lord Lufeng taking care of us. You see, when we were in the royal capital, no one cared about our thoughts." Yuffie politely replied, "I know, Lord Lufeng is a good person." Uncle Eli asked again, "When are you going to return to the dwarf country?" Yuffie replied with a thoughtful expression, "Wait a bit longer, I want to stay here a little longer." "Father, if I want to stay here forever, will you agree?" she looked at him with sparkling eyes. Yuffie asked. Her question surprised Uncle Eli. It was late at night. Lufeng had just returned from the aircraft factory and went straight to the study to look at the large map on the table. Lufeng said with satisfaction, now that the spaceship was completed, the speed of unifying Yinglu could be increased. On the map, there were many blue, red, and yellow symbols marking the cities, like flags indicating important strongholds. Pondering. Suddenly, a loud report came from the city lord's mansion, catching Lufeng's attention. "My lord, the battle report from the front line has arrived." A few days later, in the study, Lufeng was planting a red flag on the land he had just conquered with his army. Who knows how many flags he had planted? The speed at which Lufeng's army had taken over the city and territory was truly very fast. Lufeng looked at the vast map of Yinglu and the areas he had taken, and commented, "Just like that, Yinglu is basically in our hands." Mina looked at the map and saw that there were still some places where flags had not been planted. She sounded a little dissatisfied, saying, "It's a pity that there are still some places where flags have not been taken." Looking at the documents in his hand, Lufeng replied, "That was the territory of several nobles. He told Nyoer not to touch them for now." Lufeng's words made Mina wonder, asking, young master. "Why?" Lufeng explained gently, "If they can't be killed in a short time, perhaps they will unite and fight back. We must prepare, try to swallow them all at once." After hearing that, Mina let out an ah sound, understanding the city lord's foresight. Lufeng continued. "Furthermore, Nyoer is tired from the battle these past few days. Tell him to go back and swap with Nyo-san. We still have many people who need to adapt to the battlefield." Realizing Lufeng's hidden meaning, Mina's eyes lit up as she said, "Young master wants to use those people for military training." Lufeng pointed to a place on the map and said, "Once the organization is complete, I will ask Nyoer to take the team to Haiyan City and set up camp there." Hearing the unfamiliar place just mentioned, Mina widened her eyes and asked again, "Haiyan City?" Lufeng immediately replied, That place will be the bridgehead for us to deal with Fabro. In the future, many supply strategies will have to lean towards that side." Mina sighed in admiration. "Looks like Ellie will be busy soon." As soon as they finished speaking, the two people's attention was drawn to their words. Lufeng called out to me. Lufeng turned around. It turned out that two sisters from the bird tribe were coming. The one who spoke was the older sister Leia. The little sister Flay also coquettishly called out to the young master. Then the bird girl ran to hug Lufeng. Leia sat down on the chair and said gruffly, "Tell me. What is it?" Lufeng replied, I need you to take some people on a trip to distribute leaflets." Leia replied coldly, "Leaflet? Fine. Which city?" Lufeng stated his wish. Yadian, and several nearby countries. Leia didn't seem to pay much attention to what Lufeng said. She quickly replied, "Yeah, I know." Mina was using a small red flag to attract the attention of Flay, who was still clinging to Lufeng. He hadn't let go yet. It took Leia half a minute to realize that Lufeng had given her several large countries. She immediately turned into a demon with red eyes and roared in anger, "Even Yadian. Do you want us to tire ourselves to death?" Leia was a little frightened by his shout. Lufeng replied softly, "No, he told her to fly over." Leia continued, "Then give us some balloons. Those things can't fly far." Lufeng immediately replied he would use the spaceship. Leia listened and folded her arms. Annoyed, she replied, "So it was a spaceship, tell me earlier. You're being so secretive that people will misunderstand." Lufeng was stunned. Annoyed, she said, "You didn't give me a chance." Lufeng took everyone to the aircraft factory to see the newly completed spaceship. Lufeng handed over a stack of documents. Said this was the order to dispatch the spaceship. "Come over to Yuffie's place later. Don't worry. Everyone is my treasure. If anything happens, I'll be heartbroken." Leia received the stack of papers with a bit of surprise. After hearing Lufeng's words, she immediately turned around. flashed away and went to work, not forgetting to leave a report. Me. I'll go do it right away. Lu Feng turned back to the cat girl. Mina. Inform the press. He wants to print a large number of leaflets. They need to be ready before the spaceship takes off. Mina's eyes sparkled as she replied. Understood, young master. A few days later, in a castle, winter had come and snow was flying. Among the snow were leaflets being scattered. In front of a noble's mansion, letters were flying down. At this moment, the noble was looking at the falling snow and lamenting. Ah, it's so cold. When will this damn weather end? The voice startled the maid sweeping the yard and turned around. Master. Good morning. Suddenly his attention was caught by a piece of paper falling down. What was this? Then he said a word when he read the information on the paper. The paper said. The Lord of Xiang City, Lu Feng, after interrogating the first Prince Lucia, learned the truth about the death of the late king. It was all a plot by the first Prince Lucia and the second Prince Green to seize the throne. They did not hesitate to kill the king and seize the throne. Because of the struggle for power and life, we were pushed into war. Inform everyone of the truth. End it all. I follow the orders of Her Highness Lucy, to send troops to punish the rebel King Lucia. After reading, the nobleman exclaimed. What a fool, a small baron wants to overthrow the founding of Yinglu. At this moment, the maid's face was wide open. She looked up to the sky and shouted, old man, quickly look up to the sky, quickly look up to the sky. Seeing the maid's panicked expression, the old man immediately shouted, what are you panicking about? What kind of decency is this? The maid was still stuttering, in the sky. At this moment, the old man looked up and saw a huge object flying in the sky, screaming, monster, monster. The appearance of that giant strange object made the noble completely terrified. For people from another world, a spaceship was something they had never seen before. A spaceship flying in the sky brought an unprecedented shock to the people of the Yinglu kingdom. It even surpassed the news of Yinglu's overthrow. Immediately, the name of this western city echoed throughout the country following the appearance of the spaceship. Everyone felt a sense of curiosity and awe towards this western border city. The name Lu Feng, the Lord of Xiang City, also deeply resonated in everyone's heart. Wherever Lu Feng's spaceship went, it truly caused a huge stir. At this time, in the Sahara, where the beast tribe led by Princess Elsa lived, leaflets began to appear. On the green grasslands, fat sheep were leisurely grazing. Princess Elsa reached out to catch the paper that fell from the sky. As she read the content, the princess sighed in admiration. The Western Ocean city was truly becoming more and more confusing. In the chaos, the spaceship flies over the scattered letters. Bella and the Brutus in her group were also receiving the flyers that the UFO had dropped. While reading, she said, so it's a toy from the Western Ocean city, this Lu Feng really didn't stop. I just won a match, and before I could even celebrate, he was playing like this again. Good stuff, looks like it's time to go to the Western Ocean city. Looking at the spaceship flying high above, Bella's eyes were filled with interest. The leaflets were distributed everywhere, reaching every leader and noble, causing them to stir. Earl Murray just received the information, clutched the flyer of the Western City Lord, and shouted angrily. This is treason. Earl Murray, I do not accept it, you must contact the other nobles for me. What? No communication in winter. A bunch of trash, I don't care what you do, contact them for me. The subordinate below was sweating with fear. At the same time, Lu Feng spread the news, which also caused many different reactions from different places. The subordinates of the Divine Sect Master also got the information. The leader told his subordinates, no wonder they couldn't contact the Sect Master. No, I have to quickly return to Yadian to report this to the Sect Master. At this time in the Western Ocean City, Avery and Yami just arrived. Avery's eyes happily said, Lord Yami, this is the Western Ocean City. Looking at the magnificent city, people going about their business busily. Yami exclaimed. The city is so magnificent, how can it be so lively even in winter? Before, the royal capital couldn't do it either. Avery called, come on, Lord Yami, I'll take you to see Ellie. At this time, in a large crowd of beastmen, a girl said to everyone below, everyone line up, register later we will go eat. Avery brought Yami to the city lord's mansion. As soon as Avery arrived, he called out, Your Highness the Princess. The call made Ellie turn around immediately and ask, Avery is back? Didn't we say not to call Princess anymore? Why are you suddenly looking back? But even more surprising, another person appeared behind Avery. Ellie saw and exclaimed, she was Yami. Yami was also very happy that Ellie recognized him, and said emotionally, I really didn't expect that you were actually just a mountain away from me, Your Highness the Princess. At this time, at the Xiang City Lord's mansion, Lu Feng was receiving two guests from afar. At the table, Lu Feng was chatting with two female knights. Standing on either side were his two right-hand men, Ellie and Mina. In front of everyone were cups of hot, steaming tea that Nicole had carefully prepared. Elsa spoke, "Your Excellency Lu Feng, congratulations on capturing the royal capital Yinglu. This time I have brought 500 goats as a congratulatory gift." Lu Feng politely said, "Thank you." At the table at this time, the remaining female guest was Bella, who had just come from the chaos. Bella also spoke, "Your Excellency Lu Feng, my sister Dees has worked hard for you to take care of her during this period of time. You also know the situation here, 100 carts of pepper, as a thank you." Lu Feng replied, "Then I won't be polite either." The two female knights, neither willing to give in, glared at each other with dark faces. Seeing the situation at the table suddenly become tense, Lu Feng asked softly, "What's wrong with them?" Ellie sighed and said, "It's okay, young master, their relationship in the Beast Kingdom wasn't good before." Looking at each other and exchanging loving glances for a while, the two female knights stood up and shouted loudly, "Sir, I have something to cooperate with you." Bella also said that Sir Lu Feng, and neither did I. Before Lu Feng could reply, the two girls started arguing again. "Discuss with me first, based on what?" "Based on the fact that you are poor." Lu Feng helplessly reassured. "Don't rush, we have time to discuss." Two plans were presented. Lu Feng pondered and replied, "I know. Elsa, you want to occupy the entire grassland but don't have enough supplies, hope to ask for my help." Hearing that, Bella thought in her head, the entire grassland, that area is almost a chaotic place. Lu Feng continued, "Bella, you want to develop a large territory in the chaotic places, but you don't have enough weapons, I hope I can provide them for free." Bella now firmly said loudly, "Yes, as long as there is enough will, I can unify the chaotic places." The three words chaotic places also caught Elsa's attention. Recalling the requests of the two female heroes, Lu Feng happily agreed, of course there was no problem. Lu Feng's agreement made the two girls happy. Lu Feng continued, "But in my place there is an agreement, when preparing to establish a nation, as a basic national policy, we must try our best to show support to many countries. Everyone can take a look." 2 copies of the agreement were brought before the two girls. Elsa opened the document and took out the agreement to look at it. The agreement was called the Racial Agreement. Seeing that the two girls had read the agreement, Lu Feng explained, everyone knew that there were many beastmen in Xiang City now. It could be said that the development of Xiang City was inseparable from the beastmen. But there is still Yinglu, the kingdom closest to the Beast Kingdom, which has also captured quite a few beastmen as slaves in recent years. My thinking is that you absolutely must abolish slavery and free those people." Bella finished reading the agreement and listened to Lu Feng's words, and asked Lu Feng again, "Do you want this part of the agreement to be effective in our place as well?" Lu Feng replied, "Yes. Because of the exchange between us, our people will have more people coming and going in the future. This agreement will also be the best guarantee for them to be able to come to our territories. Humans and beasts can shake hands in harmony. Of course I don't want to use this to oppress. Rest assured, whether everyone agrees or not, the support I promised will be provided to everyone. There will be many detailed strategies in the future, specifically knowing the terms clearly, everyone can take it back to read more." Understanding Lu Feng's sense of justice, the two girls naturally happily agreed. "Okay." Elsa hesitated a bit before replying, "I will try to give you an answer quickly." The negotiation was considered done. Lu Feng said, "Right, there is an old friend of yours who has been waiting for a long time." Lu Feng's words surprised the two girls and asked, "Who is it?" "An old friend?" The beast girl, who Lu Feng said was their old friend, walked over, her voice suddenly, Yami. Yami appeared radiant, emotionally saying, "Princess Elsa, Lady Bella, long time no see." Bella asked, "Did she also go to the western city?" Elsa was a bit reproachful, "Where did she go? Why couldn't she be found at first?" Yami gently replied, "This is a long story." Lu Feng raised his cup of tea to his lips and sipped while listening to the conversation of old friends he had not seen for a long time. "When everything is done, everyone go do your own work?" At the table, Lu Feng started to work. He was studying the terms of the agreement. Seeing Lu Feng put so much effort into it, Mina standing beside him asked, "Young master, is this agreement really that important?" Lu Feng still did not stop answering, saying it was not important, saying it was important was very important. "What you need is a habit." Mina was surprised, "Habit?" Lu Feng continued, "In the future, trains, spaceships, and steamships will be the means of transportation that break with tradition, and exchanges between people will become more and more lively. Now what you do is make rules. As long as everyone follows your rules, it will naturally be able to quietly influence countries, diluting the so-called national viewpoint. By then, he would build a whole new civilization." Hearing Lu Feng's lofty words, Mina put her hands on her hips and thought, not understanding. Then remembering something, Mina asked again, "So we really help Elsa and Bella? They want to rebuild the Beast Kingdom. If they grow stronger in the future, will they deal with us?" Mina's innocent question made Lu Feng burst out laughing. Mina was surprised. What was the young master laughing about? Mina was embarrassed, and spoke a little loudly. What was the young master laughing about? Lu Feng suddenly stood up, walked over and hugged Mina's waist, pulling her into his embrace. He hugged her tenderly, but suddenly felt a little happy. Lu Feng's sudden affectionate action made Mina blush in embarrassment, lose her balance, and fall into Lu Feng's ink cage. Lu Feng continued, "Don't worry, nothing will happen. I help Bella because we can make her a safe haven between us and the chaos, keeping the war away from us." Even though Elsa occupied the entire steppe, due to their nomadic nature, they could not establish a permanent center of power. The lack of iron ore would also force them to rely on us. In the end, it will become our meat warehouse. Lu Feng stroked his cute little cat's head and told her some deep thoughts to make her feel more at ease. Mina replied softly, "Oh, so that's how it is." In a room where everyone was sitting and talking, Yami's voice was heard, "So that's how it was." All the lords had their own developments, surely His Majesty in the afterlife knew, and was very touched. It turned out to be Yami's voice talking to Ellie, Elsa, and Bella. Bella also kindly asked, "Yami, how have you been these past few years?" Yami tactfully replied, "Compared to you all, I have only been in the snowy mountains for a few years, it's nothing." "So, how are the museums that His Majesty prepared for the restoration of the country divided up by you, my lords?" Yami's question made everyone fall into silence and think. Ellie quietly bit into the cake, attentively looking at the notebook in her hand, many thoughts appearing in her head. The room fell silent for a moment. Bella spoke up to break the somewhat stifling atmosphere. "So, Lord Yami, what did the old king leave behind?" Yami replied, "There were weapons, gold coins, and all kinds of rare treasures." Hearing what the king left behind, Bella excitedly said, "Then I will take the weapons, my side must fight." Hearing that, Elsa spoke up to stop me, "My grassland also lacks iron." Ellie was still absorbed in her own thoughts. Nicole's cooking skills were getting better and better. Lately, if she didn't eat something, she felt like she couldn't work. It was so strange. Ellie's eyes were still glued to the notebook in her hand, not paying attention to Bella and Elsa who were about to argue. Seeing Ellie being silent all this time, Bella called out, "Ellie, say something, you also have a part in this." Only then did Ellie notice and look up. Bella continued, saying that while we were talking just now, she was just sitting there eating. Elsa also continued, "I also discovered that her appetite wasn't this big before." Ellie heard everyone say that and wondered, "I don't know why, I always can't help but want to eat, seeing it makes me can't help it. Moreover, I feel sleepy all day long and just want to go to sleep." Hearing this, Yami immediately asked, "Princess Ellie, forgive me for being blunt, but from what I can see, the relationship between you and City Lord Lu Feng seems to be unusual." Elsa immediately continued, "I already knew this, she likes Lu Feng." Hit in the heart by everyone's words, Ellie shouted, "I don't have it." Elsa asked doubtfully, "Really?" Ellie looked embarrassed but still calmly replied, "Of course not, he clearly likes me, I just did." Yami asked meaningfully, "Princess Ellie, may I ask if you and Lord Lu Feng have ever slept together?" Ellie shyly shouted again, No, how could I let him get into my bed?" Seeing Ellie's attitude, everyone understood in their hearts, so it was true. Yami thought for a while, then spoke his opinion. "Princess Elsa, Lord Bella, I have a guess." The three people whispered to each other, only to see Elsa exclaim, "Really?" Yami still kept his thoughts. Presenting the basis, "I just suspected." At first Princess Ellie's mother also had the same reaction. Ellie's face turned black, her eyes completely lost consciousness, she muttered, "What are people talking about?" After a while of discussion, the other three decided to tell Ellie. Elsa spoke up, cough cough, "Ellie, listen, you might be pregnant." The word struck like a thunderbolt, taking away Ellie's last bit of composure. Ellie was shocked and speechless. Bella spoke up, "Let's go, there's no point in us arguing further." Each person takes half of their weapons, and a little money, most of it is given to Ellie, and Ellie's part is considered as a dowry. Elsa also agreed, "I have no objection." Ellie couldn't stand it anymore, ran away, the thought still ringing in her head. Pregnant. Closing her eyes and running, Ellie rushed at Nicole who had just entered. Seeing Ellie running without looking at the road, Nicole worriedly asked, "Ellie, why are you so panicked, what happened?" Ellie was still stammering in a daze. "Nicole, nee. I'm pregnant," another person turned pale and exclaimed. Ellie ran to the study to inform her young master, who was also the author of the pregnancy. Lu Feng was also surprised, "Pregnant?" Ellie was taken for a checkup. Sitting on the bed, Ellie anxiously looked at Lu Feng who was looking at the pregnancy test in his hand and called out, "Young master." After a while of analysis, Lu Feng approached and patted her head to reassure her, "It's okay, don't be nervous, the results will come soon." Looking at everyone's expectant eyes, Lu Feng thought, "Pregnant? Will I really have a child? Me? After a while of waiting, Ellie spoke again. Young master, is there any result? Lu Feng was startled and replied, oh, let me see. Still thinking in his head, if there really is. But the image of the pregnancy test shows the harsh truth, only one line. Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief and replied, no. Ellie was panicking at this moment, it was okay. In Lu Feng's mind at this moment, being careful was in vain. Ellie became angry again and said, but Yami said I did. Yami replied shyly, I just said I was suspicious, who would have thought the princess would make such a big move? Lu Feng felt a little disappointed in his heart, so it was a misunderstanding. Outside, he calmly asked what was going on, why did everyone come to this conclusion? Bella replied shyly, I'm so sorry, Your Excellency Lu Feng. Everyone was busy talking, not paying attention to Ellie's disappointed eyes, sadly thinking, so there is no child. At this moment Mina came forward to tease, why do I feel like she's regretful? Ellie denied it, no, I haven't played enough, how could I want to have a baby? Nicole smiled gently, she scared me a lot at that time. Ellie bowed her head and replied, but if there really was a child, everyone felt that the young master would be happy. Ellie's question made everyone stop laughing, Nicole thought, maybe it was fun. The three of them blushed and looked towards Lu Feng, embarrassed about their previous thoughts. It was getting dark. In the darkness, a group of cavalrymen rode towards the gate of a castle. It turned out that this was the territory of Count Murray. In the Count's mansion, he was welcoming the other dukes he had just arrived to discuss plans against Lu Feng. He looked at the people who had just arrived and welcomed them. The people who came here wondered why they were summoned. My lord, you are in such a hurry to gather everyone, what do you want to do in the end? Count Murray stroked his beard and replied, I invited everyone here for no other reason, I just want to discuss with everyone how to deal with that traitor Lu Feng. I have a plan that can help us become independent and establish a new country, but we need everyone's help. Lu Feng returned to the study, still thinking about what Elsa said about Ellie's condition. Elsa said that Ellie recently couldn't hold it in, like sweet things, and said she was sleepy, so I thought. Lu Feng sat down at the table and said, I can't help but eat sweets. I'm sleepy. It must be because I'm too tired from working too hard. I have to think of a way to find someone to share the work with Ellie. This must be done quickly. At this moment, a bald soldier walked in from outside the door. There was a flower on his head. Was this the legendary flower that grows on his head? He held an envelope in his hand and said as he walked, Sir, there is a letter from Lady Lucy. Lu Feng replied and handed it to me. The content of the letter was, Lord Lu Feng, I saw the spaceship of Xiang City, and also received news that you have conquered other places. You are indeed a man of miracles. There are some words I said that may not be appropriate, but I still want to congratulate you. The royal capital, no, it should be called Yinglu City now. Via and I have completed the basic structure, the structure you designed has also been built. Now the nobility is just a title, and all the power has been transferred to the administrative building. But, this work item is having problems in the suburbs of Yinglu. This sentence caught Lu Feng's attention. The letter also said that recently, every time our people went out of Yinglu, they encountered bandits. Fortunately, there were soldiers accompanying them, so there were no casualties. But as far as I heard, bandits have also appeared in other places, causing no small amount of damage. Hearing Lucy's letter reporting the situation, Lu Feng was surprised. Bandits? Speaking of this, Lu Feng stood up and ordered, Where are the people? Arrange things, I want to go to Yinglu City. There was a loud response, yes. In Yinglu City, formerly the royal capital. Lord Lu Feng has arrived. Lucy came out to greet him and saluted, Lord Lu Feng, welcome to Yinglu City. Lu Feng replied, we are no longer strangers. Lucy still replied respectfully, in the future you will be the one to ascend the throne, at least in front of outsiders, I still need to show a good character to you. Lu Feng still wanted to refuse, even so, I did not want to prolong the distance because of this. In the palace, Lucy looked at Lu Feng and asked, has the time for the coronation been set? Lu Feng replied as he walked, not yet, there are too many things to handle, but it should probably be determined before spring. Lucy heard that and said, then there isn't much time left. Lu Feng continued, so we have to take advantage of every minute and hour to handle the problems. Lu Feng's appearance made Via extremely happy. Her eyes sparkled as she called out, young master, you came here this time because of the bandits, right? Lu Feng happily replied, yes, I saw everyone's letters. There's a lot of news I want to ask about. Is there anything strange about these bandits? For example, is there anything different from other bandits? Hearing Lu Feng's question, Xing replied, yes, they acted in a neat and uniform manner, clearly showing that they had undergone training. Via also replied, they were the former deserters of the first prince and second prince. Xing hesitated, this, I dare not determine. Lu Feng heard the report and replied, are they only concerned with killing people and setting fires, and not paying attention to food? Hearing that Lord Lu Feng said it was true, Xing replied in surprise, have you ever met them? Lu Feng replied, just speculation, but I already have the answer. These bandits were indeed an army, the private soldiers of the nobles. Lu Feng's words startled everyone, but the nobles in the royal capital had already transferred all their power. Via also added, that's right, young master, they had also transferred all their military power. Lu Feng explained, they are nobles from outside the capital. More than half of them saw my announcement and saw everyone's actions, and were unwilling to hand over power, so they went out to cause trouble. Princess Lucy thought, outside the royal capital. Lu Feng looked out the door and continued, resisting was normal, after all no one wanted to wait for a knife to be placed on their neck. But next time don't blame our knife for hurting you. Xing immediately asked excitedly, Lord Lu Feng, do we have to deal with them? Lu Feng replied, yes. Next, I need you to collect evidence of the nobles and bandits colluding, just have this. We can reduce the influence of the nobles to zero, no one likes a lord who doesn't protect them. Looking at everyone discussing the plan, Lucy thought, being able to deal with the nobles and win people's hearts, eliminating the nobles would be more reasonable. Your Excellency Lu Feng, no matter what the problem, it will become your opportunity. At this moment, Lu Feng was rubbing Via's head in admiration, this period of time has been hard. Via shyly replied, it's okay, I really like this job. At the same time in another city, in a large house amidst lush green trees, a loud laugh rang out. Ha 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 ha, comfortable, how many years have passed since I've been this comfortable? Take out more wine, it turns out this place is the bandit base. A guy with a fierce face and bulging muscles said, yesterday I brought people to raid that village, and I thought there were women from the human kingdom. Humph, don't mention that flavor anymore, another guy also chimed in, can you have some future? Then he burst out laughing again, you guys saw the fire last night, ha ha ha, I started the fire, it's already more than half morning. Up above, Count Murray was looking down at the laughing crowd below, his face cold, his voice harsh, a bunch of idiots. At this time, a subordinate came and gave him a piece of paper, saying, Count, this is the harvest this time. Sir, this move is really great, arranging for them to go out and cause trouble, while secretly harvesting the money below, doing it without anyone knowing. The Count held the report in his hand and replied with satisfaction, these guys really think that I will help them become the leader, Ingla's luck is over, now it's time to think of a way to get the money. The flattering subordinate continued, that's right, how could these people see through the thoughts of the Lord? The despicable and shameless Count said, wait until they come out a few more times, then we can collect the net, deal with them, and we will receive the reward from the new king. This time, at least I will be made a duke. The other subordinate also added, the Count personally led his subordinates to destroy the bandits, the merit of stabilizing the country, of course this merit is enough. The Count sneered, that was for the best. One evening, at sea, a storm arose, lightning tore across the sky and struck the sea. The huge waves caused the boats to sway and suffer great shocks. The boats were still trying to stay on the sea surface, not letting themselves be submerged by the rolling waves. In the cockpit, the atmosphere was extremely tense, only the sound of commands, steering the boat to the left, fast, the sound of panic, the boat was flooded, people were everywhere. In the cabin, regardless of the storm outside, Princess Fabreau and Field were still calmly reading their books. On the other side, Deacon Hong was still worried, constantly monitoring the movements outside. Seeing this, the princess said, Deacon Hong, don't be nervous, this sea water cannot stop us. Deacon Hong still worriedly replied, I know, princess, it's mainly because when we arrived we had suffered too much loss, the impression was too deep. The princess's eyes coldly replied, isn't this, not the same? At this time, below the ship, in the ocean, from below the ship, there were ropes, at the other end were mermen. With the ropes tightly around their necks, it turned out that those evil people used mermen to control and balance their ship. After a night of heavy rain and strong winds, the next morning the sky was clear again, the three ships safely passed through the storm, returning to the port, the FAO Empire's border gate. On the ship at this time, Princess Field was talking to the merman, you've worked hard. The merman man, after a tiring night, breathed heavily and said, you promised us at first, don't forget. She coldly replied, don't worry, as long as you all listen well, I won't touch your family. Then she turned to the subordinate beside her and said, take them down and let them rest. We'll need them later, the subordinate quickly replied, yes. The merman was taken to the compartment where his two relatives were being held. Although he was very tired, he still reassured them, Dad, it's okay, his daughter was sobbing and said, the sea God blesses you. Deacon Hong helped the princess down to the port. The subordinates welcomed her, Your Highness, welcome back to the Empire. She turned to look at her subordinate and said, arrange a car and take me back to the capital. In the FAO Empire, a carriage was approaching the castle. The servants came to welcome the princess, His Highness Field, His Majesty is waiting. A huge arm reached out and grabbed the fish drenched in sauce, bringing it to his small mouth and eating it deliciously. The courtiers below shivered at the sight. The princess entered and said, Father, your current image does not resemble a king. The king had just finished half of the fish, the sauce still lingering on his beard. He laughed loudly and replied, "Ha, he just came back and taught me. Field has not changed at all." The King Chandra continued, "As a king, I can do whatever I want, otherwise what is the point of being a king? However, the current empire can be left to me, but the next generation is uncertain. The remaining two empires have recently developed quite a bit." Field replied, "I know." The king put down the fish, wiped the sauce from his mouth, and held a glass of wine in his hand, saying, "Tell me, what did you get out of this trip?" Field's face remained cold as he replied, "Another continent, you should know." The king replied while drinking wine, knowing that someone had brought news 2 months ago. Field asked again, "Father, what do you plan to do?" The king continued, "The empire has prepared 300 ships, it just lacks a leader." Speaking of this, a count below spoke loudly, "Your Majesty, this position is not what you promised." The duke's somewhat excessive attitude just now angered the king, making the courtiers afraid and hastily apologize. The king then continued, "Field, what do you think, then say it." Field replied, "Of course I will be the leader of this fleet, I will lead them." King Chandra said, "There are many people in the kingdom eyeing this position. If you just say one sentence and want to leave, what will the others think?" The courtiers below also bowed their heads in agreement. Field took out a map in his hand and said, "This is the map of the continent. These things are the result of my work over the past few years." The crowd was stunned, so she went to the opposite coast. No wonder there was no information. The princess continued, "I understand that continent. I have also arranged many internal agents, but they only listen to me." The king was pleased and said, "Okay, I'll leave it to you." The princess replied, "Yes." At Inglu City, on a large golden ship, a voice said, "My lord Marquis, you have come this time too." The Marquis replied, "It's not often that the golden ship comes around, so of course we have to go up and play." At this time, a long-haired, cheerful-looking young man said, "Thank you for your visit. This time our golden boat will still serve everyone as before. Hope you can have a perfect cruise." In the hall, there were countless elegantly arranged dining tables. In front of a speaker that looked like a giant flower, the staff checked for a while then turned back to Lu Feng and said, "Sir, the recording is good." Lord Lu Feng. "What is this?" Princess Lucy asked when she saw these strange things. Lu Feng replied, "This is a gambling boat. Bandits can rampage throughout the country. This is not something that just one noble can organize. It must be the result of many nobles joining forces. Now in Inglu City, everywhere are our eyes and ears. We have our hands on the actions of these nobles." Lucy analyzed, the nobles also knew about it. It was not simple to catch their tail. But they urgently needed a place to negotiate, and they used the excuse of gathering. So this was the trap Lu Feng arranged for them. Lu Feng replied, "Yes, next, we just wait for them to show their tails." The golden boat was packed with passengers, weighed anchor, and headed out to sea. In the evening, the golden boat appeared shimmering under the moonlight. Sitting in front of the speaker to monitor, something caught the staff's attention, so he turned back and said to Lu Feng, "Sir Lu Feng, there's movement." Lu Feng was talking with Vaya and Lucy. Hearing this, he turned around, walked towards the loudspeaker, and listened to what Lucy's group had been up to recently. The other person replied, "Those people were scared out of their wits, and didn't dare to go out of the city at all." The other person laughed smugly, "Haha, it had to be said that Count Murray's method of impersonating a bandit was really great. He robbed money and didn't even get scolded." "You absolutely must not leak the news, let others hear." In a room on the ship, 2 of Count Murray's subordinates. The brown-robed man replied, "Rest assured, at this moment, no one would dare to be careless." The gray-clothed man continued, "The Count asked me to ask if there are any targets nearby. I remind you to be quick, otherwise by the time we have enough supplies to attack the capital, it will be spring." The other man replied, "Of course there are." That was Lu Feng's team. The other guy laughed happily when he heard about Lu Feng's team. They were all good stuff. The man in brown continued, "It was said that the supplies from that cart were used to repair the new city. There was no shortage of food, fabric, or anything else. That is the route of the convoy during the time. I have already heard, the escort is also few. When that time comes the cavalry charge will disrupt their formation." Reaching out to receive the information, the gray-clothed man replied, "Very good. As long as this time is successful, the supplies to attack the royal capital will be available. At that time, we will also quickly attack the royal capital. I will quickly convey this good news to the Count." The man in brown happily replied, "When that happens, don't forget me." The other man replied, "Don't worry, Count Murray will treat you well." The conversation ended. Via said, "Young master," they left. "Young master, what are we waiting for? Let's quickly capture them." Lu Feng turned back and replied, "No rush. Taking action now would only startle the snake. We won't be able to capture the person behind them." "What kind of person is that Earl Murray?" Lu Feng turned to ask Lucy. Lucy thought for a moment and said, "It seems like he is an earl in the east, he also has a lot of influence there." If there is still an organization with such influence around the royal capital, it must be him. Lu Feng replied with satisfaction, very good. Sink, you take people to follow that guy and find Murray's city. Sink immediately accepted the order. Lu Feng assigned tasks one by one, via arranged the men, captured the guy who just sent the news, and consulted him well. I want to know how many people in the royal capital are helping them. Via was serious, yes. Lu Feng, do we need to protect the convoy for a few more days? Lu Feng replied, lingering, no need, that's the bait I threw out. Lucy exclaimed at this moment, so that's how it is. Lu Feng looked at everyone, okay, let's start, if there is any situation, report at any time. A small, rotten boat quietly left the golden ship. On the boat was the grey-clothed messenger from earlier. Right behind was the Sink Guard's boat, watching. On the betting boat, everyone's attention was on the casino, shouting, win me, win me. The Count's subordinate was concentrating on the bet when someone came from behind and tapped his shoulder and said, my lord, there is a lord who wants to talk to you, the man in brown replied in surprise. Oh. The staff invited this guy to a room and said, this is the place. The guy in brown wondered, who is it? Before he could open the door and enter, he was struck on the head with a stick and fell unconscious on the ground. It turned out that the employee had just hit him on the head with a stick, then ordered the people inside to take him away. At Lu Feng's military camp, a soldier entered with a secret document and said to Commander Niu Dai, report, urgent orders. Nga Dai held the order in his hand and read it attentively. Then loudly commanded. At this time, at the castle in the city of the Earl, Murray. Murray just received news from Lu Feng's tracking place, the Western Ocean team has become a star. The messenger reported while eating. The Count asked for everyone's opinion. What do you think? The other guy immediately replied, now everyone knows that Lu Feng has quite a few good things in his hands, if it's really like the intelligence said, only having a few guards, I see this as an opportunity not to be missed. The subordinate behind him felt something was wrong and said, my lord, if we encounter this convoy, Lu Feng might personally come to ask about the bandits. I'm worried, there will be losses. The messenger was angry, he meant to just watch this pile of good goods pass by before our eyes. The subordinate behind him said, I meant to act properly, it would be better. Murray interrupted, no need to argue, I've made up my mind. Poor places are poor no matter how much they are looted, just consider this fleet of vehicles as the last delicacy to eat up. Their conversation was overheard by Sink, who was hiding outside. The entire army of the Count was gathered under the city gate. At the city gate, the general reported, my lord, everything is ready. The Count replied with satisfaction, yes. Then the general turned around and said to the entire army below, everyone. Lord Murray got the map of the Western Ocean Fleet, they will be passing through here. This is a gift from heaven for us to attack the capital, we must get it, success or failure depends on this time. Western Ocean, isn't that already a fortune? The soldiers were talking to each other. The general said loudly, whether we can enjoy glory and wealth or not, depends on us this time. The soldiers below responded with a loud shout. The red flags fluttered high in the wind. There was a loud shout, let's go, Sink hid on the wall and watched the army march. He turned around and said to the 3 people who were with him, Group 3 go back and report to the Lord, Group 1 and Group 2 follow me. On the picnic road, Lu Feng's convoy was leisurely passing through the lush woods. In the bushes, the Count's men were already waiting. Niu Dai rode his horse with a few soldiers, standing far away observing. In the city of Earl Murray, on the ship holding a glass of red wine, shaking it, the Earl sat leisurely on the chair, asking, is it about to start? The subordinate beside him bowed his head and replied, yes, my lord. The Count continued, when they return, you know what to do, right? The subordinate beside him replied, don't worry, sir, it's already arranged. The celebration party spared no one. Then the 2 of them laughed proudly, ha ha ha. Outside, Sink's men were lying in ambush. Sink drew his weapon, a sharp blade ready for action. At this moment, from the woods, when the convoy was moving, suddenly there was a shout, kill. The Count's general and the soldiers who were lying in ambush jumped out and charged towards the convoy. The leader of the ambushed convoy suddenly shouted loudly, the convoy was attacked, and everyone protected the convoy. Then the sword slashed the assassins who rushed forward. At this moment, in the carriage, where food and goods were supposed to be stored, the tarpaulin cover was now opened, inside were the guards of Taeduong Citadel, holding bows and arrows, ready to fight. Arrows flew out one after another, taking down the assassins. The general was shocked, his bow and arrow were wrong. The guards on the carriage continued to attack, the second group fired. The general was sweating with fear, no supplies, all soldiers, this was a trap. Then he shouted and raised his shield. But a loud explosion rang out, and the Count's troops flew away, screaming in pain. Nga rode out from the smoke, slashed the general, and gave the order for everyone to mount, leaving no one behind. In the Murray Count's mansion at this moment, the sound of a glass cup falling to the ground and shattering was heard. Red wine spilled all over the floor, next to the subordinate who had just been defeated. Sink held a knife to the Earl's neck and threatened him. Earl Murray, our lord, invites you to come with us. At Inglu City, on the guillotine were 3 counts, a general, and a grey-robed subordinate, their heads covered, waiting to be beheaded. Below, many curious people came to watch. The count was still very arrogant and domineering, saying, "Let me go, let me go. You kidnappers, you kidnap nobles, do you know what crime it is?" The count's hood was removed. The count looked at the crowd in front of him in surprise. "This is..." Lu Feng came from behind and said, "Then what crime did you commit by ordering your private soldiers to disguise themselves as bandits to rob and kill people?" The count suddenly turned around and asked, "Who?" Lu Feng replied, I am Lu Feng." The count was surprised. "Lu Feng, ridiculous, when did I do that?" Then he looked to the side and saw that his subordinate Marquis had also been captured. Lu Feng held the document in his hand and continued, "Give up on your excuses. Marquis Crow has already admitted it and provided relevant evidence. Furthermore, we found your chief knight among the bandits who robbed the carriages. And this is the military order you personally issued." Faced with this evidence, what else could he say? Lu Feng said as he tossed the stack of papers into the air. Seeing the papers falling on the ground, the count was frightened. "Here." The people reached out and grabbed the papers that Lu Feng had just thrown out and said angrily, "It turns out those bandits were all done by the nobles, damn nobles." Lu Feng continued to speak forcefully. "The count used private soldiers to cause chaos in the country, and linked up with many nobles, causing serious harm. I have decided to strip him of his noble status and execute him. The people below support Lu Feng. Lu Feng will take down his brother." Lu Feng continued, "To prevent this from happening again, in the country of Yinglu, all nobles disbanded their private affairs, and nobles only kept their titles and were not allowed to possess any special privileges. From today onwards, it will be implemented. All the people support Lu Feng, shouting together, 'Long live Lord Lu Feng, long live, long live.'" Under the sunlight, the executioner's sword shone brightly. Approaching the count, he was terrified, waiting. But before he could finish speaking, his head was severed from his neck, and blood flowed like a river. In the capital of the Kingdom of Ali, the Kingdom of the Dwarves, King Robinson is having dinner with his daughter, Princess Daisy. He was about to put the piece of meat in his mouth when a loud report came. "Your Majesty, no, something's not right." He put down his fork and asked, "What's so tense?" The report caught the attention of the princess and her guards. The guard ran in to report. His face was purple with fear, bloodless, his eyes were wide open and lifeless. He spoke so hard his throat almost flew out. Outside there was a monster. Everyone rushed out. Looking up at the blue sky, hidden among the white clouds is a strange giant that can fly. The guard beside the princess nervously observed the giant flying object, sighing, "Oh my god, what is this?" As soon as he finished speaking, from that strange object, a blue-haired bird figure with wide, jet-black wings flew down and landed in front of the king and princess. The mirror bird beast just landed from the spaceship, respectfully greeted, paid respect to King Robinson, paid respect to Princess Daisy. Daisy cried out with joy, "Miss Mira." Mira held a brown scroll, walked over and gave it to the guard, presented it to the king, and said, "This time we are representing King Lu Feng as an envoy to your country." The words that were filled with surprise made the princess startled and ask again, "King, Lu Feng has become king?" The king beside him was still attentively reading the imperial edict that Mira brought. Mira replied to the princess, "Yes, His Majesty the king has ended his rule over King Yinglu and is about to hold a coronation ceremony. The real messenger representing the communication is Miss Darlene. I just came to report in advance. I hope your Majesty will arrange for someone to prepare an empty space for us to land," Mira said as she pointed to the giant spaceship in the sky. The king finished reading, looked up at the flying ship, and said to his daughter, "Daisy, I see that the western city is even more mysterious than I imagined." Daisy was also looking at the thing flying in the sky with wide eyes, and replied, "Yes." In a very large yard that had just been urgently arranged, the spaceship landed. The noble Miss Darlene stepped down and respectfully saluted. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, long time no see." Behind her were the dwarf father and daughter, Uncle Eli and little Yuffie. Princess Daisy politely replied, "Miss Darlene, welcome to Ali country." Seeing the two people behind, the princess asked, Miss Darlene, who are these two?" Darlene introduced, "These two are Uncle Eli and Miss Yuffie. They are the main researchers of our Western City's Technical Research Department. The spaceship was also made by them." The two respectfully greeted the princess. Darlene continued, "This time they followed us to find someone, and asked for your Majesty's help. Your Majesty agreed. It was easy. Who was it?" Hearing this, Yuffie said a bit agitatedly, "Tony Lisa, she is my mother." "Tony family? I understand, I will arrange for knights to protect everyone there." If you have any requests, just tell the knights. Yuffie bowed her head in gratitude, thanking His Majesty the King. Darlene told the king about the main matter. Your Majesty, this time I came to represent King Lufeng to invite members of your country to attend the coronation ceremony. The king replied, "Oh, when?" Hearing Darlene reply, 4 days later, Princess Daisy was surprised at the short notice. 4 days later, she replied. Last time it took me 2 months. This time I won't make it. Darlene smiled and replied. Don't worry, the spaceship can reach Xiang City in a day and a half. Proudly talking about Xiang City's scientific achievements. What Darlene said completely stunned the princess. Speak loudly. What? What happened just now made the king think a bit. Then he replied. Okay. If King Lufeng invites me, I will definitely attend. But I need some time to arrange state affairs. Darlene replied. I think King Lufeng will be very happy to see His Majesty coming. In addition, here is the agreement document until then. Please invite Your Majesty to participate. Your Majesty can review it first. In the hallway, Princess Daisy asked her father, Father, are you really going to the Western City? The king was still attentively studying the paper Darlene gave him. Of course. Lufeng took that thing out and invited us. He didn't simply want to welcome us, but wanted to show off his strength and power. The king looked at the huge object of the spaceship and continued. Furthermore, I think this agreement represents a treaty. Based on this point alone, I must come and confirm it. In the Western City, in the City Lord's mansion, Lufeng was receiving the heads of various countries and territories. Looking at the agreement on the table, Lufeng said to everyone. You have all read the agreement. Is there anything that cannot be accepted? We can discuss it together. On the table now were King Robinson of the Ali Kingdom, Queen Timothy of the Yadian Kingdom, Princess Elsa, the leader of the Beast race, and Bella, the leader of the Chaotic region. Everyone signed. Elsa said. No need. I agree. Timothy also added. I represent Yadian and agree. Bella replied. I agreed. Dees was with him anyway. Seeing that King Robinson was still hesitant, Lufeng asked. So what is King Robinson thinking? The king did not answer. There were many thoughts in his mind. Eliminate all slaves. Implement circulation. Leave the rest alone. This treaty with the dwarves doesn't have many strings attached. There are also many benefits. But it feels like it wouldn't be very realistic to implement. After thinking, the king replied. However, we should consider protecting this case together. We are all in the same alliance. Moreover, in front of this alliance. And Lufeng's existence. I also agree. After King Ali signed, Lufeng was elated. He happily held the wine glass in his hand. He said, okay. From now on, everyone will work hard. Let's cooperate and win together. Everyone raised their glasses. Absolutely. Lufeng leaned back in his chair. Heaved a sigh of relief and said, this project is over. Nicole brought over a tray of hot tea. Gave Lufeng a cup. Young master, you've worked hard. Mina sat on the sofa and stretched and relaxed. But it must be said. The days are getting better. Ellie thought about something. Replied. It feels a bit unreal. A year ago we were almost starving to death. Now we have turned into the ones who shoulder the burden of the country. Lufeng replied, holding a cup of hot tea in his hand. It will get better and better. The two girls rushed over. Urgently asked. That's right, young master. Thinking about how he will arrange the coronation ceremony tomorrow, Mina also continued. That's right. Young master is not saying anything. I also want to know. Lufeng smiled and replied mysteriously. Want to know? Well then. Serve me well. I will tell you. Lufeng said with a perverted face. Lufeng's words made the three girls scream in embarrassment. Young master hooligan. The next day. The weather was sunny. At the central square of the Western City. People were bustling about. Looking at the magnificent building in front of her. Bella exclaimed. What an ostentatious architecture. Ellie also continued. At first the young master took out the blueprint. I was also startled. Elsa turned to Ellie in surprise and asked. Oh, you still call Lufeng young master? Before Ellie could speak, Mina replied. In front of acquaintances, call him young master. With strangers, you can call him differently. A solemn convoy of black cars drove up, attracting everyone's attention. Ellie shouted. The young master is here. The convoy slowly entered the square and then stopped. On the upper floor, King Robinson saw several shiny black machines appear, moving and emitting smoke. Asked, "What are those?" Princess Daisy replied, "I heard that their research and development department made them. They call them cars." King Ali stroked his beard and said, "This is also a good thing." Amidst the fireworks, the guard Sync respectfully helped Emperor Lu Feng get out of the carriage. "Bow your head, Your Majesty." His Majesty Lu Feng. The majestic Lu Feng, wearing a royal robe with the main color being black, exuded a mysterious authority. The girls in the stand stared at Lu Feng without blinking. Ellie exclaimed, "The young master's clothes. So handsome." Mina next to her kept clapping her hands, sarcastically saying, "I don't know who said it last night. Watching is so tiring." Amidst the majestic and welcoming music, Lu Feng majestically stepped onto the high platform. Everyone bowed their heads in respect to the new emperor. Lu Feng looked down at all the people and guests below and said, "Everyone, many of you have read the newspaper and know what I am about to say, so I will not say much more. Starting today, the country of Yinglu will change its name to Han Dynasty. Xiang City will become the capital of the Han Dynasty, renamed Shan'an City. And I am the first emperor of the Han Dynasty. I will protect everyone. From now on there will be no more hunger or thirst. There will be no more wandering, no more anxiety and panic. I will lead everyone with me to build a peaceful and strong nation, all for the sake of long-lasting peace." As soon as Lu Feng finished speaking, all the people below shouted loudly, "Long live the king, long live Chang'an City." Bella put her hands on her hips and exclaimed, "That's great." Elsa also continued, "But those promises were enough for many people." Lucy thought and replied, "Chang'an City is a beautiful name." Lu Feng finished his speech, then left. Nicole, wearing a pink hanfu, looked down at the people below and announced, "The celebration party, begin." Chang'an City was filled with cheers and applause from the people, and confetti flew into the sky. Cheerful music arose. In the middle of the square, everyone, civil and military officials, dancers, and common people were dancing. The cheerful music echoed forever. In the mansion, Lu Feng was holding a banquet to entertain the guests. Holding a glass of wine in his hand, Lu Feng said, "Everyone, Chang'an City's ability to get to where it is today is more or less thanks to your help. Today I am here to celebrate. 1 is to thank everyone for their help, 2 is to hope we can cooperate in harmony and live in peace forever." As soon as Lu Feng finished speaking, everyone happily raised their glasses to toast to a long and prosperous life. King Ali happily and excitedly put his arm around Lu Feng's shoulder and said, "Your Majesty Lu Feng. I say, can you sell us some of the things from the western city?" Princess Daisy's face darkened. "Father, pay attention to etiquette," he thought to himself. "I also want a spaceship and a car." Lu Feng happily replied, "Cars and spaceships are part of our business plan." Having his wish fulfilled, the king's face lit up, his eyes sparkling like stars as he replied, "Wow, I'll wait." Queen Timothy also held wine to celebrate. The queen's mouth curled up very cutely, saying, "Your Majesty Lu Feng, congratulations." Lu Feng turned around, replied, "Your Highness Timothy, rest assured. As for Yadian, I have already planned it out. When the time is right, I will take action." Timothy replied excitedly, "Really?" "Hee, as expected of the man I have set my eyes on. Speaking of which, Your Majesty Lu Feng, have you really not thought about a marriage alliance? By then, our territories will be combined and we will be the largest country." Timothy said as he rushed forward and hugged Lu Feng, causing Lu Feng to turn black and be stunned. He replied, "This." At the banquet table, Xiang turned to Bella and said, "My lord Bella, are we really not going to congratulate His Majesty Lu Feng?" Bella replied, still picking up food, "What should I say? I've already given these to him. What do I need?" Then turned to say, "You are right, Elsa." Elsa replied, "Don't talk to me like you." Bella's answer made Xiang's face darken. At this moment Lu Feng came over, calling, "Elsa, Bella." The two girls raised their glasses to toast. Bella said, "Oh, Your Majesty Lu Feng, congratulations." Elsa also added, "Congratulations, Your Majesty Lu Feng." Lu Feng replied, "Spring is coming, is everyone ready?" The two girls replied in a ready voice, "Our tribe has already prepared the grassland." "Don't worry, Your Majesty Lu Feng." Bella winked mischievously and replied, "I will help you guard the chaotic place. I will not let the fire of war burn your Han Dynasty. After all, you had this intention from the beginning, right? Don't worry, with me here, the chaotic place is no problem." Lu Feng politely smiled and replied, "Then I'll bother you, Bella." Everyone drank and talked, also congratulating us on our smooth cooperation, borrowing the words of His Majesty Lu Feng, "Congratulations to everyone, long life and peace." In the newly founded country, winter, the season of cold and ice, has passed. Now, spring has come, all things revive. The peaceful continent has also begun to have war. Cavalry groups, abundant in strength, attack. In Chang'an City, formerly known as Xiang City, Lu Feng was sitting in his office writing his memoirs. Lu Feng wrote, "I am Lu Feng, an Earthling. It has been a year since I discovered that I could freely travel to another world. This is the century of human, beast and spirit existence. And I became a lord in it. No, I am now the king of a kingdom, possessing the rights to build my own nation. The first thing I want to do is build a national management system. First, the Justice Department, managed by Lucy and Via. Lucy was formerly the Princess of Englu. The fame and interests of the community that she represents can both help her complete this task well. And Via has a solid system in her hands, which can also help Lucy supervise and manage the administration for me. Next is the Science Department. Yuffie and Uncle Eli are in charge of developing my designs. Their excellent technology is suitable for this. As for research and development, I will bring modern technology from Earth. As for the army, it is still managed by Uncle Ngu's family." Uncle Nyo was surprised to be entrusted with such an important responsibility and said, "Young master, this is not appropriate." Lu Feng confidently replied, "No need to say more. I believe in Uncle Nyo Ben, and I also believe in your son." Receiving Lu Feng's trust, Uncle Nyo Ben bowed his head and replied, "Yes, our Nyo family will absolutely not let you down." Lu Feng continued to formulate plans. The second thing is to establish a monetary system. Collect all the gold coins, open money shops throughout the country, called banks. Be in charge of issuing paper money and managing the national economy. This is temporarily only for me to manage. Regarding the issue of paper money, Nicole said excitedly, "Wouldn't that mean we can print as much money as we want?" Lu Feng laughed and replied, In theory it is like that, but paper money cannot be printed arbitrarily. Anyway, holding this can bring us great convenience," Lu Feng said while rubbing Nicole's head. Darlene spoke up, to ensure the value of paper money. Paper money has no value, it is only circulated indirectly. If the amount of paper money exceeds the total value of goods, then the paper money will lose its value. People will be harmed by holding money in their hands, so we cannot print too much. But holding the right to issue paper money is also holding the right to dominate the accounting of goods. The convenience that His Majesty Lu Feng is talking about must be this. Lu Feng thought, as expected of the lady with the most business sense. Nicole stood to the side listening, not understanding what she said, but this is great. Lu Feng smiled and thought, it seemed that for that project, Darlene could be in charge. In Lu Feng's system construction, establishing a public environmental sanitation system, Ellie looked at the plan in his hand and asked, "Young master, this is?" Lu Feng replied, "This is the need to clean up our cities nationwide. You don't want every city you go to be dirty and smelly, right?" Ellie thought about it and said, "Yes, I don't want to go to other cities." "Does that require other cities to do the same as our Chang'an city?" Lu Feng folded his arms and replied, "There was no need at first. But 1 year, I want 1 year later, no matter what city we go to, we won't feel disgusted anymore." The fourth in Lu Feng's construction was the transportation system. Thursday, Friday, and many other plans. Lu Feng stopped writing and let out a sigh. He was finally done. Mina came forward and said, "Young master has worked hard." Then she went forward and massaged Lu Feng's shoulders and said, "Young master, if you are tired, then rest." Lu Feng, relax, being a king is really tiring. I don't know why so many people want to be king. Then Lu Feng suddenly hugged Mina's waist and let her sit on his lap. Mina suddenly shouted, "Young master." Holding Mina in his arms, Lu Feng said, "Don't move, let me hug her and rest for a while." Mina shyly hugged Lu Feng's neck and replied, "Naughty girl." Lu Feng said, "Yes, someone told him something important today." Mina suddenly asked, "What is it?" Lu Feng continued, "They asked him, how is the position of queen arranged?" This question made Mina blush and shyly answer. This, young master, I suggest you take Her Highness Lucy, and let her be the queen." Mina thought for a moment, then said regretfully. Mina's opinion surprised Lu Feng to the point of stupidity, Leaving Lu Feng, Mina continued, I feel, the new kingdom cannot let people feel that beastmen get too much favor. That's not good. Before Mina's intention, Lu Feng replied, "Don't say stupid things, this is not a favor, it is what he thinks everyone deserves." Mina continued to answer, "But if the queen position?" Lu Feng did not let her finish her sentence. He took her hand and placed it on his chest and continued, "Remember what I told you before. He still wants to get the beast." Lu Feng's words made Mina move to tears. Me. I have something to do, I'll go first." Mina ran away. Lu Feng sighed, "Silly cat. It seems that the position of queen will be vacant for a while." At the Ministry of Science and Technology, Lu Feng just came to check the situation, met the dwarf. Lu Feng immediately greeted, "Uncle Eli." Uncle Eli ran out to welcome His Highness Lu Feng. Lu Feng asked, "Heard that the gun research was successful?" Uncle Eli happily laughed out loud, not disappointing His Majesty's expectations. Come over here, please. Lu Feng followed Uncle Li's direction. In the distance was the table where Yuffie was sitting. On the table were countless metal parts. Yuffie looked at Lu Feng and replied sadly, unfortunately he didn't come to find her today. Yuffie's distraction made the employee beside him flustered and asked, Miss Yuffie, can we start this matter now? Uncle Li led Lu Feng to a secret place covered with a tarpaulin. He opened the tarpaulin and said, Your Majesty Lu Feng, please take a look. Is this the look you want? Under the canvas are 2 guns, one short and one long, along with countless bright yellow copper bullets. Holding the rifle in his hand, observing every detail, Lu Feng praised, Formidable. Uncle Li, I didn't expect you to make it so quickly. Uncle Li scratched his head in embarrassment. Don't underestimate my skills, Your Majesty Lu Feng, because this thing has been made, but is it really as you said, shooting that far? Lu Feng picked up the pistol, loaded it, and said, Try it, won't you know? Lu Feng brought a gun to the shooting range. The snow outside was still white. Lu Feng loaded his gun and aimed. In the distance was a target with a bright red bull's eye. Lu Feng reminded, Uncle Li, you'd better cover your ears. Uncle Li made a sound of surprise. Lu Feng raised his gun, aimed at the bull's eye, and fired a shot. Lu Feng commented on the shot, not bad. Even though Li covered his ears, he was still startled by the loud gunshot. Your Majesty Lu Feng, this sound is too loud. Can such a loud sound really replace a crossbow? As he said this, he was even more shocked to see that the target had been shot to pieces. He exclaimed, It's been shot through. Lu Feng held the pistol and fired a few more bullets, making Uncle Li open his eyes. Lu Feng put away his gun and said to Uncle Li beside him, Start preparing the equipment. I want this thing to be put into production as quickly as possible. This will become our strongest defense wall. Uncle Li immediately replied, I understand. Lu Feng returned to the palace and summoned the commanding members of the army. Uncle Nio arrived and greeted, Young master, you're looking for us. Lu Feng immediately replied, Uncle Nio Ben, please sit down. Actually, this time I called everyone together just to simply talk about my upcoming preparations and arrangements. Now we have taken over the Yinglu country, but Xiang city is still in the west, and does not have strong control over many places. So I plan to let you go to the 4 main cities to set up military stations. 1 is to stabilize the situation, and 2 is to increase our control over the region. Ngungu immediately said, Young master, whenever you want us to depart, just give the order at any time. Lu Feng immediately replied, Don't worry, it won't be that urgent, I will let everyone know when the time comes. But I also have news, it's time to tell everyone. According to intelligence, in the short term, about 2 months, in the long term, 5 months, there will be a large fleet of ships attacking us. They will even go inland. Uncle Nio Ban immediately asked, Young master, do you know the number of their troops? Lu Feng replied, This is not clear yet, but the absolute number is more than when we face each other. Nio De continued to ask, What do you want us to do? Lu Feng replied, I guess they will dock at Haiyan City, so Nio De, in the next few months, I will prepare to hand over Haiyang City to you to guard. Later, I will train a new branch of troops to hand over to you. Nio De replied with a serious face, I understand, young master. Lu Feng announced, Alright then, let's adjourn the meeting. Everyone responded with a yes and dispersed. It was night, the moon was shining brightly in the sky. Under the moonlight, on the street, the group of old Nio's family who had just left the mansion were discussing the plan. Someone said, we should split up next. Another person replied, haha, this is also a hopeless situation. But unexpectedly, now we have become great generals. This was something I had never thought of before. Lao Niu walked behind his children, still deep in thought. Seeing his father like that, Ngudai turned back and asked, Father, what's wrong? Old Ox replied in a serious voice, There are a few things, I will explain them clearly to you now. His Majesty trusts us, and does not even send troops to subdue us. Until now, he still lets us call him Young Master, not wanting to distance ourselves from us. Young Master is our family's noble, and must repay his kindness. From now on, you are not allowed to be two-faced, not even for a moment of thought. You must be single-minded, for His Majesty Lu Feng, to protect the country, understand? Hearing his powerful and reasonable words, everyone agreed, understood, father. Old Niu continued, Of course, my son, I understand. I hope you will not disappoint my expectations of you. Ngudai spoke on behalf of the children. Father, rest assured, we will never be the same. It was late at night, in the imperial study, Shannan City. Lu Feng had just finished some work and stood up to stretch. Finally almost finished arranging. On the table were huge piles of documents. Lu Feng held a document in his hand and continued, Next thing, we have to prepare the navy. If we can contact them, that would be good. Mermaids, how to contact? Lu Feng sighed in thought. The next morning, at Shannan City port,
countless mermaids appeared swimming towards the riverbed. People on the shore saw this and wondered. Who is this? A human or beast? One person replied. I don't know, never seen it before. It turned out to be a tribe of mermaids from the bottom of the deep sea, led by a mermaid general, the father of the mermaid Billis, who was saved by Lu Feng and his group before. The mermaid began to transform her fish tail into legs and stepped onto the shore. Billis saw the castle she used to live in and excitedly said to the general, Father, this is the Western City. Looking at the magnificent city in front of him, the general couldn't help but sigh. Oh, it's very prosperous. Billis continued, Xiang City can't just be described as prosperous, Father will understand very quickly. At this moment, the group of mermaids were attracted by the shout from behind. The person in front quickly stopped. I am a guard from Chang'an City, quickly report your identity and purpose. It turned out that Dees and the guard team had arrived. Billis saw an acquaintance and waved. Dees, long time no see. Dees was surprised. Billis. Dees brought the mermaid group back to the emperor's palace. There were many changes that surprised Billis. Lu Feng was now the king. Nicole replied, yes, a lot of things happened after she left. General Kizan, please wait a moment, I will go inform the young master now. The general turned to Billis and said, Daughter, you just said that the West, Chang'an City has only been developed for a year. Billis replied, yes, everyone in the castle says so, he is indeed like that. The general was even more surprised after hearing this. In just 1 year, he had already developed his power into a nation. This Lu Feng was truly formidable. At this moment Lu Feng came over to greet them. The two had been waiting for a long time. Long time no see Billis, Billis replied, Lu Feng your majesty. Looking at the person next to Billis, Lu Feng asked, this one, General Kizan, right? The Grand General also smiled gently and replied, Your Majesty Lu Feng, this time I came mainly to thank your country for saving my daughter. Also heard a lot of news related to Chang'an City, curious, boldly came here, hope you understand. Lu Feng happily replied, yes, Chang'an City is always welcome. That's right, there's something I want to ask the general. The general happily responded and invited him to speak. Lu Feng continued, I received news that pirates attacked your mermaid tribe at first. It seems to be related to Fabro's Black Iris. I want to know, do you know anything about Fabro country? General Kuzan replied, Fabro, we don't know much about this place either. But we can confirm, they came from the other end of the Storm Sea. Lu Feng heard the strange place and asked, what is the Storm Sea? The Grand General immediately explained that it was a violent sea, with huge waves and reefs everywhere, dark clouds and heavy rain. Any fleet passing through the Storm Sea would suffer great damage. But we, the mermen, can help the fleet pass through the Storm Sea. I'm afraid this is the reason they attacked us. After listening, Lu Feng thought, so that's it. The general continued, fortunately they left, otherwise we mermaids would have lost sleep and appetite. It's just a pity that we couldn't save our captured brothers. Lu Feng put his hands on the table and said seriously, I have bad news, they will be back. Lu Feng's news startled the mermaid father and son, what? Lu Feng continued, according to my information, they will return in a few months and dock here. By then, the size of the fleet will be even larger than before. Looking at the place Lu Feng pointed to on the map, Billis was surprised, Father, this place. Lu Feng asked, what's wrong with this place? The Grand General said, we dare not. The sea route from the Storm Sea to this city is the territory of our mermaid tribe. If they enter and exit the Storm Sea for a long time, our mermaid tribe will be in danger. Lu Feng thought for a moment and said, so that's it, General, I have a suggestion. The general replied, Sir Lu Feng, please speak, pointing to a location on the map. Lu Feng continued. I suggest everyone move out of the current tribe. If necessary, I will plan an area in Han Dynasty for everyone to live in. All the necessary supplies and money before the tribe goes into orbit will be paid by me. Hearing these unexpected things, the general asked in surprise, Your Majesty Lu Feng, what do you mean? Lu Feng continued to reassure, don't worry, Billis and I are friends, we have no intention of harming anyone. Of course, I also have my own plans. I want to cooperate with the merfolk, organize a branch of the merfolk army to participate with the navy, to deal with Fabro. After listening, the general hesitated, here, let me think. Then turned to his daughter and asked, what do you think? Billis hesitated, I, father, can absolutely trust His Highness Lu Feng, this I can guarantee. Hearing his daughter's words of trust, the general replied, all right, Your Majesty Lu Feng, how many men do you need? Lu Feng replied, 1,000 is enough. If possible, I want to continuously rotate these 1,000 people. I will be in charge of the food and equipment of these 1,000 people. At the same time, I will periodically pay them salaries and they will have the same treatment as Han Dynasty soldiers. After hearing that, the general's face brightened as he replied, okay, I hope His Majesty Lu Feng keeps his promise. The two of you shook hands and agreed.
Don't worry, I'll have someone draft the treaty now. At this time, in the garden filled with green trees and sunlight, a person was sitting playing the zither and said, FAO has dispatched the fleet. The person beside him replied, Yes, your majesty, I heard that a new continent was discovered.
So this is the Larsen Elf Empire.
The one playing the zither was the king.
Interesting, summoning the fleet, this good thing cannot be left to FAO alone. The maid immediately replied, Yes, your majesty Lauren.
At the same time, in the Orc Empire. In a place filled with various weapons, Mila was reporting, Your Majesty Blake, we have obtained accurate information.
The FAO Empire sent a large fleet to a new continent. Your Majesty, what should we do?
The muscular man was checking the weapons, turned back and said, Still need to ask, of course it's to rob.
The ambitious Blake clansman said.
On the vast Sahara steppe, there is a military base of the Yadian kingdom's theocracy. The scenery looks peaceful with blue sky, white clouds, and yellow sunshine.
Not too far away was an area of overgrown grass.
If you looked closely, you would see a group of people camouflaged under the grass.
It was Princess Elsa's army.
After observing the actions of the people below, Princess Elsa raised her hand and gave the order, Kill.
The entire army immediately removed their camouflage and charged forward to attack the enemy by surprise.
The people at the camp were still busy eating and drinking. When they heard the attackers' voices, they were startled and shouted loudly, It's an attacker. They ran in all directions, unable to hold their swords or draw their knives, screaming for help as they ran.
Where did they come from?
Wherever Princess Elsa went, the holy soldiers were executed, dying without a word.
On another battlefield, specifically the chaotic one, Bella's camp.
3 armies, the Mulan Principality Army, the Manor Principality Army, and the Chama Principality Army from 3 sides attacked Bella's camp. The people in the camp hurriedly reported, Boss, the Mulan, Manor, and Chama duchies, these 3 forces are cooperating with each other. They launched a joint attack, their numbers are several times greater than ours, we are about to lose our grip. In contrast to the panic of her subordinates, Bella calmly wiped her sword, her face unchanged as she said, What's the rush?
We haven't used the weapons Lu Feng gave us yet. This is just the right time.
Outside the battle line, Bella's soldiers stood in formation on the high fence, raising the weapons Lu Feng had crafted, preparing to aim. The soldiers below the wall saw that there were only a few people above and said, Everyone, don't be afraid, there are only a few people like this. While they were changing arrows, they charged through there. But as soon as the discussion was over, countless arrows were shot, and countless people were hit by the arrows. Only then did the faces of the soldiers below change in suspicion. What kind of weapon is this? With only a few people, why did they shoot so many arrows? They saw that the situation was not good and immediately gave the order to run away. Bella and Ryan stood on the observation deck and saw that the other troops had fallen. They immediately gave the order, they were scared out of their wits. Open the door and kill them for me. The whole vast sky resounded with the sound of killing. In the Yadian kingdom, standing before the high platform of the majestic palace was the person of the great priest Yad. The believer of the great priest spoke loudly on his behalf to the people of the kingdom below the city. The Han Dynasty people, they go against the teachings of the God, do not listen to advice, are evil people, are superstitious, we must replace the God, help them, change them, let them return to the embrace of the God. The people and soldiers below heard the message from the person on the platform, all raised their swords and said in unison, Return to our master, return to our master. The person on the stage continued speaking, Go forth, my people, the light of the master will protect everyone. On the side of Chang'an City, Lord Nyoben was reporting the situation to Lu Feng, young master. As he predicted, the Yadian kingdom officially sent troops. Lu Feng clasped his hands behind his back and said thoughtfully, War is the best stage. It is time for the people of this era to see the true power of firearms. Ordered the entire army to obey orders and work according to plan. Lord Nyoban immediately obeyed orders. Under the clear blue sky and the bright sunlight, Lu Feng's spaceship flew to the wilderness where the Yadian soldiers marched. The army below looked at the giant thing flying in the sky and couldn't help but wonder what it was. One of the people in the group immediately made a judgment, heard that Han Dynasty had a hot air balloon team, could it be this? The person next to him then immediately denied it, not a hot air balloon, I have seen hot air balloons before, not this big. Hearing that, the person who spoke first couldn't help but be curious, so what was it after all? From the spaceship up there, countless blue bags were dropped down. The people below shouted, it seemed like something was falling, everyone quickly dodged. Big green bags fell straight to the ground, the soldiers hurriedly dodged. The commander on the horse galloped away, he felt a little smug when he saw that he missed, he just needed to avoid it, then he wouldn't. Of course, before he could finish his sentence, the bag in his pocket suddenly lit up and exploded. The powerful firepower sent people, horses, and even the ground flying several meters into the air. Not just one, but hundreds of bags exploded at the same time, sending each person flying up, scattering the army. The lucky ones who were not hit ran away in all directions, some even looked towards the direction of the bomb explosion and shouted loudly, it was divine punishment from the god.
We shouldn't attack with the Han dynasty, let's run away quickly.
On the side of the great minister Yad, after receiving this shocking news, he could not believe it and exclaimed.
What? Divine punishment. The person below in a kneeling position confirmed, yes, that was right.
Many knights said, it was heavenly fire and divine lightning sent down by the god. The Yadian god master sat on the throne of the Yadian palace, his hands clenched into fists. His face was gloomy as he asked, Leo, I ask you, the Han dynasty refused the god master's protection and even locked up the emissary of the sect leader.
Is this an heretical act? Leo replied, yes. The cult leader continued to ask, so is it wrong for you to eradicate superstition?
No, it is not wrong. The face of the Yad patriarch became worse and worse.
If you guys are not wrong, then why is the god punishing us? Hearing that, Leo was stunned. He stood up and said loudly, these are definitely evil heretics using demonic weapons.
They want to separate our love from the master. That Yad archbishop saw that his manipulation plan had succeeded and his expression changed.
He smiled and replied, that's right.
At this time, we should trust the master even more. Leo, after understanding, immediately ran to report the news, not forgetting to say, Great Patriarch, I will go tell everyone. The archbishop's face was full of danger as he instructed, go, remember, the divine master will always protect us.
In Shan'an City's study, Lu Feng stood listening to Lord Nyoben's report. Young master, the explosives did not scare the Yadian knights at all.
They continued to increase their troops. Lu Feng heard this and said that he expected that the sect leader was full of ambition and wanted to use his sect to control the continent. He could not be scared away because of this small matter. Lu Feng looked into the distance and continued, I don't think that can scare them, the real plan is just beginning now.
Nicole, invite Timothy over.
In Timothy's room at the moment, she was playing Go with Robin, making a white move while asking, how is the situation? Robin on the opposite side immediately replied, the archbishop continued to send troops. Hearing this, Queen Timothy could not contain her anger, she expressed her grievances, in terms of Han Dynasty's military strength.
Lu Feng could completely die to defeat Yadian soldiers, right? If he doesn't do so now, what does he want in the end?
Robin heard her vent and could only silently pick up the cake and eat it, unable to say a word. There was a knock on the door, knock knock. Timothy's expression was extremely bad at this moment, she stared at the person who just knocked on the door and entered, sparingly saying a word,
Nicole didn't know she was upset so she still smiled and announced, Your Majesty Timothy, the young master wants to see you.
In the imperial palace, Queen Timothy and Mr. Robin went to Lu Feng's desk and asked.
Your Majesty Lu Feng, I heard you were looking for me.
Lu Feng saw the two of them and immediately replied. You probably heard already, Yadian is now sending out troops again. In a few days, 7 or 8% of the troops within Yadian will be concentrated on Han Dynasty.
Hearing that, Timothy put on a doubtful face. You are looking for me.
Lu Feng immediately replied, the time was ripe, it was time for her to return to Yadian. Queen Timothy heard these words and could not hide her joy, a bright smile appeared on her face. However, Robin beside him was somewhat confused, his whole body had a big question mark and he wondered, thank you Lu Feng for keeping your promise, but why at this time? Lu Feng explained naturally, according to the news from Yadian, the tax reduction she had announced after she left had been stopped by the city's grandmaster. It was a hard-won hope, the people definitely wouldn't just watch it disappear.
They began to protest fiercely, strike, and demonstrate.
But the people of the cult did not allow everyone to lose control, and their methods would become even more fierce.
She must have left someone behind. Silently fanning the fire within.
Timothy heard these words, she raised her hand to stroke her hair, and replied without any hesitation.
Lu Feng is wise.
Lu Feng continued, under the chaos, Yadian's economy was damaged. The people would have more difficulties, and also become more dissatisfied with the main god.
Now there was war.
There was also news that the leaders had failed and were being punished by the angels. The leaders of the religions had already lost their credibility in this rumor. The people's respect for them was almost zero. At this time, a leader is needed to lead them forward.
Yadian will be able to completely eradicate the malignant tumor of religion, truly change, and gain a new life.
Therefore, I will tell my men to quickly bring you back to Yadian, and at the same time provide you with money and personnel, so that you can quickly control Yadian and become the true queen of Yadian.
Queen Timothy was overjoyed when she heard this.
She placed her hand on her chest and bowed her head sincerely, thanking His Excellency Lu Feng.
The people of Yadian will be grateful to you.
However, in contrast to her, Robin was a bit worried and put her hand on her chin in thought. Lu Feng saw his expression and asked, Your Excellency Robin, do you have any doubts? Robin immediately expressed his thoughts.
Sorry, I was thinking, is it really that easy? The Yadian military forces are all in the hands of the priest. As long as he gives the order, the knights will quickly return to Yadian and suppress the violence against the people. At that time, understanding Robin's worries, Lu Feng tapped his fingers on the table, one hand cupping his cheek, and asked back. You want me to say this with my own mouth, right? Don't worry, Han Dynasty is not someone you can come and go as you please. Receiving an answer that satisfied him, Robin no longer had any worries. He smiled and expressed his gratitude to Lu Feng. If so, then your majesty and I can rest assured. We, Yadian, will not forget this favor. At this time, it was Queen Timothy's turn to ask. However, I still have one more question, and I want to ask Lu Feng how His Majesty plans to resolve it. The scene changed to the Han Dynasty border. The Yadian soldiers galloped forward in groups. The surrounding ground and sand were flying up from the horses. One of the soldiers optimistically suggested. There hasn't been any fighting recently. Let's find a comfortable place. As soon as he finished speaking, an arrow suddenly flew towards him. The soldier quickly pulled on the reins. Forced to stop, and shouted. Who? There was no reply. All he got in return was a barrage of arrows. The Yadian soldiers immediately urged their horses to turn around when they discovered another group of people ahead. It was the enemy attacking. Quickly return to camp. Through binoculars, the black-haired man turned back to warn the blonde man behind him. Tell the general, someone from the west wants to leave. Stopped. Next, we continue to blockade to ensure not even a fly escapes. Ellie's office asked. Have the supplies that Queen Timothy needs to leave been mobilized? The announcer immediately said the bad news, causing Ellie to stand up in disbelief. What? Something unexpected happened. Why didn't you tell me right away? The other person hurriedly explained. After something happened on the other side, they immediately sent someone to report it. But the news that pigeons can transmit is limited, and the places they can go to are also limited. Wait until we receive the news. It's already been 3 days. Ellie couldn't help but worry after hearing this situation. This wouldn't do. The matter of supplies was considered a small matter. But if military intelligence changes in the blink of an eye like that, it would take 3 days to transmit. Thinking of this, Ellie turned around and ran away. She said, I'm going to find the young master. Chang'an City, Emperor's Palace, Imperial Study. Queen Timothy was continuing to talk about the matter she didn't understand when Ellie suddenly opened the door and barged in. Young master, it's about intelligence matters. Ellie was about to continue when suddenly her eyes met Queen Timothy's. After looking at each other for a few seconds, Ellie turned to Lu Feng to report. Recently, we had to fight with Yadian, and also mobilize supplies. Along with supporting Bella and my sister, we generated a lot of intelligence, but the information transmission was too slow, causing delays. I wonder if the young master has a solution. Hearing Ellie say that, Queen Timothy immediately continued, the same goes for me, the plan that His Majesty Lu Feng discussed with me. I feel it is very perfect, but when implementing the plan, both sides need to coordinate the timing perfectly, but the way to convey intelligence is currently. After listening to the two of them talking, Lu Feng immediately laughed and said, regarding this matter, I was planning to tell everyone. The golden sunlight shone on the Han Dynasty sky, and Lu Feng led her to a strange place. Queen Timothy couldn't help but ask curiously, Your Majesty Lu Feng, what is this place? Lu Feng raised his hand to introduce, this is the department I just built, this place can solve the problem of communication between us. Lu Feng called out to Yuffie, seeing him coming Yuffie quickly ran out and shouted, Your Majesty. Lu Feng looked at her with a happy face and asked, is the stuff ready? Yuffie smiled and replied, don't worry, it's done. Immediately, Lu Feng turned back and said to the two people standing behind him, Ellie and Queen Timothy, let's go, let everyone take a look at this timeless product.